Chapter 1005. Duan Lingtian found his entrance in a spacious cave by following his memory of walking all the way from the periphery of Emperor Wu's secret treasure. At the same time, this place was also an exit. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Duan Lingtian made his move. After passing through the exit, he continued to fly out. With a flash, he realized he had returned to the boundless grassland in the illusory formation. Looking at the boundless grassland in front of him, he felt extremely peaceful in his heart. With my current speed, I can save more than half of the time compared to when I first came in. At this moment, Duan Lingtian, who had achieved a breakthrough in his strength, was full of confidence. Subsequently, Qingfeng Emperor Wu's voice resonated from the polyphony formation that was integrated into the illusory formation. It entered Duan Lingtian's ears and guided Duan Lingtian in the direction to leave. If it were not for this, Duan Lingtian would have definitely gotten lost. The illusory formation was unpredictable. Although he still appeared in the grassland, there were some substantial changes to this grassland. It was completely different from the grassland he passed through last time. Not only that, at this moment Duan Lingtian, who was flying in the sky above the grassland, soon discovered another problem. When I came here, there were many offensive inscription formations that were integrated into the illusory formation that attacked me. However, I don't see any trace of those inscription formations now. Duan Lingtian muttered to himself as he hurried along. Just as Duan Lingtian and the group of young powerhouses were hurrying along in the illusory formation, at the intersection of the central area and the northern area of the northern desert, there was a Hengduan mountain range that was particularly quiet. In the sky above a valley in the Hengduan mountain range, 3 old men were sitting cross-legged in the sky. They were in a state of cultivation and turned a deaf ear to everything around them. The 3 old men sat cross-legged in the sky as though they were one with the heaven and earth. There was no distinction between them anymore. Whoosh! Suddenly, a slight wind whistling sound came from the bottom of the valley. The sound of wind whistling was not very loud, but when it entered the ears of the 3 old men, it was like a thunderclap, causing them to open their eyes at the same time. A bright light flashed across their eyes. Then, their gazes fell on the young man who had just come out of the gray light shield. Zuiyu. One of them was an old man with white hair and eyebrows. He looked like an immortal, but when he saw the young man, he couldn't help but frown. The young man who came out of the gray light shield was none other than Zuiyu, the #1 person among the younger generation of Anika sect. Master. When Zuiyu came out, his face was still a little ugly. When he heard someone calling him, he hurriedly looked over and bowed respectfully. The old man before him was his master, Bai Yuhai. He was also the only martial monarch powerhouse in Anika sect. Zuiyu, what's going on? Why are you the first to come out? Bai Yuhai asked in a deep voice. In his opinion, those who entered the Emperor Wu's secret treasure would have a higher chance of obtaining the profundity fragment that their Anika sect needed if they stayed in there for as long as possible. However, his direct disciple was the first to come out. Haha. Old Bai, it seems like your direct disciple isn't that great after all. A sturdy old man nearby laughed out loud. Indeed, he's not that great. He came out of the Emperor Wu's secret treasure so quickly. I don't think he obtained any profundity fragment, another old man said in a gray-robed old man's expression. The other gray-robed old man said indifferently as he looked at Bai Yuhai with a mocking gaze. When Bai Yuhai heard the 2 old men's mocking words, his face turned grave. He looked at Zuiyu with a hint of displeasure in his eyes. At the same time, he asked in a deep voice, Zuiyu, did you obtain any profundity fragment? No. When Zuiyu heard the 2 old men's words, he was shocked by his master's words. He did not dare to hesitate and quickly answered. I told you. It's impossible for him to obtain a profundity fragment if he came out so quickly. The gray-robed old man said again. Old Bai, I've always heard you boast about how outstanding your direct disciple is. Now it seems like he's just a so-so. I'm afraid he's not even as good as my useless disciple, Lei Zhong. The sturdy old man smiled at Bai Yuhai. When Bai Yuhai heard the 2 old men's mocking words, his expression turned even more grave. He glared at Zuiyu as though he expected better from him. Zuiyu could not help but smile wryly when he was glared at by Yuhai. However, when his gaze fell on the other 2 old men, His eyes could not help but flash with a trace of ridicule. At the same time, he said bluntly, "Seniors, the reason I came out so quickly is to report to both of you." Although Zuoyu appeared humble when he faced the two old men, there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. These two old fogies were mocking his master, saying that he was useless? He was curious. What kind of expression would these two old men have when they found out the most outstanding disciples of their Izumo sect and North Nether sect had been killed? Report. The two old men were stunned when they heard Zuoyu's words. Even Bai Yuhai looked at Zuoyu with a puzzled expression. He was curious why Zuoyu was in such a hurry to report to the two old men. At the same time, he could not help but glare at Zuoyu again. In his opinion, nothing was more important than the profundity fragment. Zuoyu had come out of Emperor Wu's secret treasure in advance for the sake of Izumo sect and North Nether sect. It was no doubt that he was playing with the future of Anika sect. Yes, Zuoyu responded to the two puzzled old men in front of him. "Humph. Zuoyu boy, just tell us what you want." The sturdy old man snorted. "Zuoyu boy, you rushed out of Emperor Wu's secret treasure in such a hurry. Don't tell me you want to tell us that our disciples have obtained a profundity fragment?" The gray-robed old man looked at Zuoyu and asked nonchalantly. "Haha, that's possible." The sturdy old man burst out laughing again when he heard the gray-robed old man's words. Bai Yuhai, who was standing at the side, had a grave expression on his face. "Seniors, before I report to you, I hope you'll be mentally prepared." Zuoyu maintained a humble expression on his face, but there was a hint of gloating in the depth of his eyes. "Let's see how long you two can be smug for." Mentally prepared? Mentally prepared for obtaining a profundity fragment? You don't have to worry about that, Zuoyu boy. I've already prepared for that. The sturdy old man smiled. He did not notice the gloating in the depth of Zuoyu's eyes. However, the gray-robed old man noticed it. He frowned as an ominous feeling rose in his heart. He asked in a deep voice, "What's the matter? Seniors, please restrain your grief." Zuoyu did not hesitate and said bluntly, "Restrain your grief?" The moment Zuoyu's words left his mouth, Bai Yuhai's expression froze. As for the other two old men, their expressions changed. "Zuoyu boy, what do you mean by that?" At this moment, regardless of whether it was the sturdy old man or the gray-robed old man, they were no longer as casual as before. They had a serious expression on their faces, causing the atmosphere to become heavy. Senior Tong Shan. Zuoyu first looked at the sturdy old man, the Izumo sect's martial monarch powerhouse, and said slowly, "Your direct disciple, Lei Zhong." Before Zuoyu could finish his sentence, Tong Shan's expression changed drastically. At the same time, his words were interrupted by an aura that swept toward him. The terrifying aura landed on him, causing him to take a few steps back involuntarily. At this moment, Zuoyu could feel his internal organs trembling. His vital energy and blood surged up, and there was a sweetness in his throat. Barf! Zuoyu's face flushed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood from the pressure of Tong Shan's martial monarch powerhouse's aura. When a martial monarch powerhouse was enraged, just his aura alone was enough to make a fourth-level void transformation martial artist like him spit out blood. One could imagine how terrifying a martial monarch powerhouse was. Tong Shan. Bai Yuhai's expression changed drastically when he saw Tong Shan oppressing his direct disciple with his aura. Whoosh! At the same time, a surge of aura extended from his body and crushed Tong Shan's aura. However, Tong Shan did not care about this at all. He stared at Zuoyu with his big eyes and asked in a deep voice, "Zuoyu boy, what happened to Lei Zhong?" Zuoyu took a deep breath. Although he was furious, his anger disappeared completely when he looked at Tong Shan. A martial monarch powerhouse was a lofty mountain that he could not surpass. "Senior Tong Shan, your direct disciple Lei Jun was killed," Zuoyu said word by word. Boom! Zuoyu's words were like a bolt from the blue, causing Tong Shan's expression to change drastically. Who was it? Tong Shan moved and appeared in front of Zuoyu in just a blink of an eye. He reached out his hand to grab Zuoyu's shoulder, as though he wanted to interrogate Zuoyu about who killed his direct disciple. The current Tong Shan did not have the demeanor that a martial monarch powerhouse should have. Right now, he was just an ordinary old man. An ordinary old man who was enraged when he heard that his direct disciple, whom he regarded as his grandson, was killed. Tong Shan. Earlier, Bai Yu Hai was also shocked by Zui Yu's words. When he regained his senses, he saw Tong Shan charging towards Zui Yu. In the next instant, he stood in Tong Shan's way. Get lost. Tong Shan was furious when he saw that someone dared to stop him from asking about his direct disciple's murderer. Tong Shan, who had lost his mind, did not care who was standing in front of him. He lifted his hand and struck out with his palm at lightning speed, causing the air around him to explode continuously. As a martial monarch powerhouse, Tong Shan struck out furiously. Apart from causing the air to explode, the force of his palm also stirred up gusts of strong wind that swept through the entire valley in just a blink of an eye. Chapter 1006. Bang! A loud explosion reverberated in the air as Bai Yu Hai and Tong Shan's palms collided. When the two martial monarchs' palms collided, a terrifying energy swept out and collided violently. A deafening sound rang in the air and shook the hearts of the people. In the next moment, an invisible airwave swept out in all directions from the point of collision, turning into a vast gust of wind. At once, the flowers and trees in the valley were uprooted. It was a wretched sight. Bai Yu Hai and Tong Shan, the two martial monarchs, were in a stalemate. Since their strength was on par with each other, neither of them wanted to give in to the other. Tong Shan. At this moment, the gray-clad old man spoke. You should listen to Zui Yu carefully. What's the use of being so agitated now? Can you avenge your direct disciple? Upon hearing this, Tong Shan suppressed his agitated emotions and moved away from Bai Yu Hai. Zui Yu, tell me. Tong Shan took a deep breath and asked Zui Yu, who was shielded behind Bai Yu Hai. Seeing that Tong Shan had no intention of attacking him, Zui Yu could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Then he recounted some of his experiences, including the deaths of Lei Zhong and Lei Jun. When Tong Shan learned from Zui Yu that Lei Jun was also dead, he was even more furious. Lei Jun was not only the biological brother of his direct disciple, Lei Zhong, but he was also the direct disciple of the sect leader of Izumo sect. He was the one who brought Lei Jun out. However, now that he had died in Emperor Wu's secret treasure, he did not know how to explain this to the sect leader when he returned to Izumo sect. Due to his superior status in Izumo sect, even the sect leader of Izumo sect had to be respectful to him. This time, even if Lei Jun was dead, the sect leader of Izumo sect would not blame him. But in his heart he couldn't get over it. They were killed by the same person. Just when Tong Shan was about to explode in anger, Zui Yu spoke again in a clear voice. Who? Upon hearing Zui Yu's words, Tong Shan narrowed his eyes. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. His voice was cold as though it came from an ice cave. Zuqing. He was also killed by the same person. Zui Yu did not answer Tong Shan for the time being. Instead, he looked at the gray-clad old man standing at the side. He was the martial monarch powerhouse in the North Nether sect, Feng Tong. As soon as Zui Yu's words fell, Feng Tong could no longer calm down. His face changed dramatically, and his anger soared to the sky. Who is that person? Although Su Qing wasn't his personal disciple, he was his personal disciple's disciple, his grand disciple. His direct disciple was the current sect leader of the North Nether sect. And now, his grand disciple had been killed? His name is Duan Lingtan. Zui Yu, who had successfully infuriated the two martial emperors, said with a cold glint in his eyes. Duan Lingtian, as long as you can come out of the secret treasure of Emperor Wu alive this time, you will definitely die. Zui Yu swore inwardly. In his opinion, it was impossible for Duan Lingtian, who was targeted by a martial emperor, to survive. He's the person who broke into the secret treasure of Emperor Wu from another entrance. He's a disciple of the third-rate force, the Five-Element sect, in the eastern district of the northern desert. Zui Yu revealed everything he knew. However, he did not mention the fact that Duan Lingtian had publicly announced his departure from the Five-Element sect. Five-Element sect? Bai Yu Hai, who was standing at the side, was shocked when he heard this. Many years ago, a young powerhouse with monstrous innate talent had appeared in the Five-Element sect. Due to this reason, he had heard of the Five-Element sect. When he learned that the two most outstanding young disciples of Izumo sect and North Nether sect had been killed, he no longer blamed his direct disciple, Zui Yu, for not helping Anika sect obtain the Profundity fragment. Based on Zhu Yu's words earlier, Duan Lingtian was shocked. He was lucky to be alive. At this moment, even though Bai Yuhai was a martial emperor, he could not help but break out in cold sweat for his disciple. Duan Lingtian? 5-element sect? Since you killed my direct disciple, I, Tongshan, will definitely annihilate your entire sect. Tongshan raised his head abruptly and looked up at the sky as he shouted. Tongshan's voice reverberated in the air. A series of majestic sound waves soared into the sky, killing a few unlucky birds that happened to fly by. The birds' corpses fell from the sky. Although Feng Tong did not roar hysterically like Tongshan, a cold gleam flashed in the depth of his eyes as if he was about to devour someone. His hatred for the 5-element sect's disciple, Duan Lingtian, whom he had never met, was no less than Tongshan's hatred. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was unaware of what happened outside entrance number 1. Duan Lingtian was also unaware that he had been targeted by 2 martial emperor powerhouses. Both of them had the intention to kill him without exception. Very soon, Duan Lingtian returned to the vast platform at the end of the stone stairs at the side of the high platform under entrance number 2. The platform was shrouded in black fog with illusory formations hidden inside. Duan Lingtian stood on the platform and turned a deaf ear to the blade sects, Empyrean temples, and emotion-severing sects disciples who were walking past him. Only when the 5-element sects disciples walked past him would a faint smile appear on his face. Senior Brother Lingtian. Senior Brother Lingtian. Although Duan Lingtian had announced that he was leaving the 5-element sect, the 5-element sect's disciples still treated Duan Lingtian as their senior brother and idol. He had killed the strongest powerhouse among the younger generation in a second-rate force all by himself. In the history of the 5-element sect, there had never been such a monster. Duan Lingtian waited quietly. Finally, the person he was waiting for appeared. A figure that looked like a fire elf was the first to appear before him. Elder Brother Duan. Tianwu. Upon seeing the person, Duan Lingtian smiled as he greeted her. The person was none other than Feng Tianwu. Feng Tianwu's current strength far surpassed Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong. Due to this reason, Duan Lingtian was not surprised that she was the first to appear. Very soon, Huang Daniu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong walked out of the illusory formation one by one and joined up with Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu. Let's go. Since everyone was here, Duan Lingtian and the other 3 did not stay any longer. They climbed up the stone stairs one by one and flew to the top of the high platform at lightning speed. Soon after, they arrived at the top of the high platform. Whoosh! 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 Very soon, Duan Lingtian and the other 3 borrowed the force from the high platform and flew out of the Emperor Wu's secret treasure one by one. They reappeared in the vast valley outside of entrance number 2. The moment Duan Lingtian and the other 3 appeared, they became the center of attention. This was especially true for Duan Lingtian. More than 90% of the gazes were on him. Duan Lingtian is out. Among all of us who entered from entrance number 2, as far as I know, only Duan Lingtian has obtained the profundity fragment. The 5-element sect is in luck this time. Apart from the 5-element sect's disciples, the group of disciples from Blade Sect, Empyrean Temple, and Emotion-Severing Sect could not help but mutter to themselves when they looked at Duan Lingtian. Their voices were filled with envy, but none of them were jealous. This was because they knew that the reason Duan Lingtian was able to obtain and keep the profundity fragment was all because of Duan Lingtian's powerful strength. Otherwise, even if Duan Lingtian was lucky enough to obtain the profundity fragment, he would not have been able to keep it. Sect Leader Peak Master. After Duan Lingtian came out, he was the first to fly out and arrive next to Guochong, the sect leader of 5-element sect, and Chi Yu, the Peak Master of Wood Peak. With a raise of his hand, a fragment that was shining with purple energy appeared in his hand. It was the 3rd-level Monarch Stage Thunder Profundity Fragment. This Thunder Profundity Fragment was the profundity fragment that Duan Lingtian had obtained from the Sword Monarch's treasure. Ever since he obtained the 8th-level Monarch Stage Profundity Fragment from Peng Bao, this profundity fragment was dispensable to him. Therefore, he decided to give it to the 5-element sect as a form of repayment for the 5-element sect's kindness in cultivating him. Great! Under the burning gaze of the other force's senior officials, Guochong took the concept fragment from Duan Lingtian and laughed heartily. His laughter came from the bottom of his heart, and it was filled with joy. As a powerhouse at the peak of the void, he had comprehended 2 types of 9th-level void transformation concepts, and one of them happened to be the thunder concept. In other words, this thunder profundity fragment happened to be of use to him. With the help of this thunder profundity fragment, it would not take long for him to successfully comprehend the thunder profundity and break through to the martial monarch stage to become a martial monarch powerhouse. Congratulations, sect leader. Qi Feng was the first to congratulate Guochong. Congratulations, sect leader. At this moment, the other 3 peak masters, including Cha Bai, the peak master of Fire Peak, also congratulated Guochong one by one. Congratulations, sect leader. Subsequently, the group of 5 element sect's disciples who were lucky enough to survive also congratulated Guochong one by one. Duan Lingtian, do you really want to leave the 5 element sect? Very soon, Guochong put away the thunder profundity fragment in his hand, as though he had just obtained a precious treasure. With a solemn expression, he asked Duan Lingtian. At this moment, the others finally remembered. Not only did Duan Lingtian obtain a profundity fragment from Emperor Wu's secret treasure, but he had also gotten himself into a huge disaster that could be considered as a catastrophe to the third-rate forces that they were in. Duan Lingtian had killed the 2 most outstanding young disciples of the second-rate force in the northern desert Izumo sect. The 2 young disciples of Izumo sect were undoubtedly the future pillars of the sect. However, they were killed by Duan Lingtian. How could Izumo sect not be angry? Yes. In the face of Guochong's question, Duan Lingtian nodded and did not deny it. Back then, when he admitted that he had killed Lei Jun and Lei Zhong, every young powerhouse present on the scene saw it clearly. Duan Lingtian, why don't you reconsider? Who knows, we might be able to come up with another solution. Guochong said with a frown. He knew that he could not just let go of a person who had obtained a profundity fragment for the sect and made a great contribution to the sect. I have an idea. Qi Feng, who was standing by the side, replied calmly. Just when everyone's gaze landed on Qi Feng, Duan Lingtian said with a determined expression, Sect leader, peak master. I've made up my mind. Let this matter come to an end. Chapter 1007. After all, it was impossible for him to stay in the 5-element sect forever. When he first joined the 5-element sect, it was more for the sake of coming to Emperor Wu's secret treasure and reuniting with Feng Qianwu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong. There was no other reason. Now that he had achieved his goal, there was no need for him to continue staying in the 5-element sect. The incident this time happened to be an opportunity for him to leave. Everyone has their own ambitions. Qi Yu was about to continue speaking when he heard Duan Lingtian's words and saw the resolute expression on his face. A gleam flashed across his eyes as he nodded his head. He respected Duan Lingtian's decision. Since you insist on leaving, it's useless for us to persuade you to stay. However, you must remember one thing. You, Duan Lingtian, will always be a disciple of our 5-element sect. The door of the 5-element sect will always be open for you. Guochong said to Duan Lingtian in a serious manner. His words were sincere and came from the bottom of his heart. Thank you, sect leader. Upon hearing Guochong's words, Duan Lingtian quickly expressed his gratitude. At the same time, he looked at Qi Yu and said through voice transmission, Peak Master, I won't be returning to the 5-element sect with all of you this time. I'll have to trouble you to take care of Yi Xian. If it's possible, I'd like to ask Peak Master to take Yi Xian as your direct disciple. Of course, it's not for my sake. It's for the sake of Yi Xian's innate talent and comprehension ability. I believe Peak Master will never let a bright pearl be covered in dust. Since he was already prepared to leave the 5-element sect, Duan Lingtian would, naturally, have to make the necessary arrangements. Yi Xian was the one who followed him to the 5-element sect's wood peak. This time he left without saying goodbye. No matter what, he wanted to give her an explanation. At the very least, he wanted her to have a backer in the 5-element sect so she would not be bullied. Naturally, he believed that as long as Yi Xian was given time, Yi Xian would definitely become the rising star of the 5-element sect. She would stand out among the group of young disciples in the 5-element sect. As long as she's as outstanding as you said, I'll consider it. Qi Yu's reply was simple and straightforward. Thank you, Peak Master. Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief when he got Qi Yu's agreement. As for Yi Xian's talent and perception, he was still very confident. Then Duan Lingtian looked at Huang Daniu, who had an ugly expression on his face, and his eyes were filled with reluctance. He smiled and said, Daniu, all good things must come to an end. You don't have to be like this. When you go back this time, remember to say goodbye to Xiaoxian on my behalf. Tell her that I'll visit her when I'm free. Huang Daniu nodded. I'll take good care of Xiaoxian. I won't let anyone bully her. Duan Lingtian did not pay much attention to Huang Daniu's words. This was because he knew that with Yi Xian's innate talent and comprehension ability, she would definitely be taken as a direct disciple by Qi Yu, the Peak Master of Wood Peak. Once Yi Xian became Qi Yu's disciple, she would become his personal disciple. Who in the Five Elements sect would dare to provoke her? The current Qi Yu was different from the previous Qi Yu. Ever since Qi Yu displayed his strength that was at the peak of the void, his position in the Five Elements sect was destined to rise as well. He would be able to catch up to the sect leader, Guochong. Then before Duan Lingtian left, he bade farewell to Yufeng, the Peak Master of Water Peak, and Tiangu, the Peak Master of Earth Peak. As for Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak, he was completely ignored by him. Duan Lingtian. Cha Bai held it in for a long time. In the end, he could not help but blurt out in a deep voice, You're a great contributor to our Five Elements sect. Cha Bai, admit that. However, why did you kill my direct disciple, Hu Fei? After leaving the Five Elements sect this time, I don't think Hu Fei took the initiative to provoke you again, did he? It was apparent that Cha Bai had learned from some of the Five Elements sect's disciples that his direct disciple, Hu Fei, was killed by Duan Lingtian. Now, he was denouncing Duan Lingtian for his crime. However, Duan Lingtian ignored him as though he did not hear Cha Bai's words at all. He did not bother to explain. Hu Fei did not take the initiative to provoke him again. Just the thought of it made him feel like laughing. Before entering Emperor Wu's secret treasure, Hu Fei even sent a message to Chan Feng, the sect leader of Sun Moon sect, through voice transmission. He told Chen Feng that his strength was far more powerful than Lu Kai, the Sun Moon sect's disciple, and asked Chen Feng not to agree to his bet. It was fortunate that Chen Feng did not believe his words. Otherwise, the two 9th-level concept fragments in Chen Feng's hands would definitely not belong to him. It was precisely because of this matter that he directly killed Hu Fei not long after he entered Emperor Wu's secret treasure. In his opinion, if Hu Fei did not die, he would be a great disaster sooner or later. Zishang was undoubtedly a good example. He did not wish for a second Zishang to appear. Of course, it was not because he was afraid. It was just that he did not want to waste so much time and energy to deal with those conspiracies and tricks in the dark. When Cha Bai saw that Duan Lingtian had completely ignored him, his face turned even gloomier. Although he had already decided not to incur any more enmity with Duan Lingtian, that was before Duan Lingtian killed his direct disciple, Hu Fei. The moment he found out that Hu Fei was killed by Duan Lingtian, the scruples he had toward Duan Lingtian in his heart had completely vanished. He could not wait to kill Duan Lingtian with his own hands to avenge Hu Fei. In his entire life, he only had one direct disciple, and he even regarded him as his successor. However, right now, his direct disciple, his successor, had been destroyed by Duan Lingtian. Sect leader, Cha Bai took a deep breath and looked at Guochong with his bloodshot eyes. He wanted Guochong, the sect leader of Five Elements sect, to seek justice for his direct disciple Hu Fei. However, when he saw that Guochong had no intention of paying any attention to him, he knew that Guochong did not intend to interfere in this matter at all. When he thought about it, it made sense as well. No matter what, Duan Lingtian had still obtained a profundity fragment for the Five Elements sect. He was a great contributor to the Five Elements sect. In front of the profundity fragment, the life of his direct disciple, Hu Fei, was not worth mentioning at all. At once, Cha Bai swallowed the words that he was about to say. His gaze then shifted back to Duan Lingtian. His eyes were filled with coldness and viciousness. Huh. Duan Lingtian immediately noticed the viciousness in Cha Bai's eyes. He could not help but frown as he thought to himself, this Cha Bai is just like his direct disciple, Hu Fei. If I let him live, sooner or later, He'll be a scourge. It's a pity that I can't get rid of him. Indeed. Putting aside the fact that Cha Bai was the peak master of Fire Peak in the Five Elements sect, his strength was terrifying. His current strength was not comparable to Cha Bai's, even if he was stronger than him. Unless Cha Bai had secretly done something that almost killed him, it was impossible for Guochong, the sect leader of Five Elements sect, to just stand by and watch. No matter what, Cha Bai was still the peak master of Fire Peak. In terms of identity, status, and influence, he was not someone that his direct disciple, Hu Fei, could be compared to. At this moment, Feng Tianwu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong had already handed over their spatial rings to the Blade Sect senior officials to check. Although Feng Tianwu had obtained a 9th-level Monarch Stage Fire Profundity Fragment from Emperor Wu's secret treasure, the Profundity Fragment had already merged with her body. Putting aside the fact that the Blade Sect senior officials could not find out about it, even if they could, it was impossible for them to restore the 9th-level Monarch Stage Profundity Fragment to its original state and use it for their own use. As for Su Li and Zhang Shouyong, they did not obtain the Profundity Fragment at all. After the verification, the Blade Sect senior officials were a little disappointed. Duan Lingtian, especially the sect leader of Sword Sect. There was a hint of bitterness in his eyes when he looked at Duan Lingtian. It's all because of that Skywolf fort. If it wasn't for them, Duan Lingtian would have been our Blade Sect's disciple long ago. The Profundity Fragment he obtained would have been handed over to Blade Sect instead of the Five Element Sect. Saber 5, the vice sect leader of Blade Sect, gritted his teeth as he looked at the 5 vice fort masters of Skywolf Fort who were standing alone. I curse all 20 of their Skywolf Fort's disciples to be killed. Immediately after, Sword 5 added another sentence. Upon hearing Saber 5's words, not only Feng Tianwu, Su Li, and Zhang Shouyong, but even the group of Blade Sect's disciples who were lucky enough to survive had a strange expression on their faces. One of the 20 Skywolf Fort's disciples had fallen into the bottomless abyss to kill Duan Lingtian. The other 19 disciples had coveted the 4 9th-level concept fragments in Duan Lingtian's hands. They had attacked Duan Lingtian as soon as they entered the Emperor Wu's secret treasure. In the end, all of them were killed instead. Sect leaders, I plan to leave with Brother Lingtian and return to our hometown, the Dark Han Dynasty. Zhang Shouyong took the initiative to tell the 2 sect leaders of Blade Sect. Duan Lingtian had already told him about this matter before it was announced. All right. The 2 sect leaders of Blade Sect nodded in agreement. Initially, with Zhang Shouyong's innate talent and comprehension ability, it was difficult for both of them to take him seriously. However, since Zhang Shouyong and Feng Tianwu entered Blade Sect together, they knew a little about Zhang Shouyong. They knew that Zhang Shouyong came from the Dark Han Dynasty and had a family there. Sect leader, I'll be leaving with elder brother Duan this time as well. At this moment, Feng Tianwu followed up and said. Before she could finish speaking, she looked at the vice sect leader of Sword Sect, Jian Shisan. Vice sect leader, please tell my father that I'll be returning to the Dark Han Dynasty with elder brother Duan. Jian Shisan nodded. The 2 of us old men have no objections to you returning to your hometown. However, we're worried about the 3 of you young people going such a long journey back. The sect leader of Sword Sect frowned. Why don't I ask Shisan to go with all of you? The Shisan that the sect leader of Sword Sect mentioned was naturally Jian Shisan, the vice sect leader of Sword Sect who was also Su Li's master. For Jian Shisan, the vice sect leader of Sword Sect, to personally escort them, it was obvious how important Feng Tianwu was to the sect leader of Sword Sect. Thank you for your kindness, sect leader. However, I think there's no need to trouble vice sect leader. Feng Tianwu rejected the sect leader of Sword Sect's kindness. Before she left Emperor Wu's secret treasure, she had also worried about this when she decided to return to the Dark Han Dynasty with Duan Lingtian. With my current strength, I'll be able to protect all of you on the way back to the Dark Han Dynasty. This was what Duan Lingtian had said to Zhang Shouyong and her at that time. Chapter 1008. Ever since she met Duan Lingtian, Feng Tianwu had always trusted him unconditionally. This time, just like before, she did not doubt Duan Lingtian's words at all. She did not doubt Duan Lingtian's ability at all. In her eyes, her elder brother Duan was the most outstanding man in this world. Nobody could compare to him. Let's go. Duan Lingtian looked at Feng Tianwu and Zhang Shouyong. After bidding farewell to them, he flew away under the watchful eyes of many people present on the scene. The group of people from the Five Element sect, including the sect leader Guochong, watched as Duan Lingtian left. Duan Lingtian. Qi Yu looked at the purple silhouette in the distance and muttered to himself, I wonder if I'll have the chance to see you again in the future. If I do, how strong would you be now? Qi Yu's eyes were filled with anticipation as he muttered to himself. He believed that if he had the chance to see Duan Lingtian again in this lifetime, Duan Lingtian would definitely give him a big surprise. After witnessing Duan Lingtian's innate talent and comprehension ability, he was very confident in this. I hope you'll be able to survive. Soon after, Qi Yu recalled the conflict between Duan Lingtian and the second-rate force in the northern desert, Izumo sect. His heart clenched slightly before it relaxed again. Duan Lingtian is a rational person. Since he dared to kill Lei Zhong, the strongest person among the younger generation in Izumo sect, he must have a plan in mind. As long as he intentionally hides himself and stays away from the northern desert, Izumo sect might not be able to find him. Qi Yu thought to himself. If Qi Yu knew that Izumo sect was not the only sect that had their eyes on Duan Lingtian, even Anika sect and North Nether sect, the two second-rate forces in the northern desert, he would not be so optimistic anymore. Duan Lingtian. Cha Bai, the peak master of Fire Peak, watched as Duan Lingtian left. His face was filled with gloom. Deep in his eyes there was a hint of extreme hatred, as though he was about to devour someone. At the same time, Feng Tianwu and Zhang Shouyong caught up with Duan Lingtian and flew away. Soon they disappeared before everyone's eyes. As time passed by, another two figures flew out of Emperor Wu's secret treasure. Its senior brother Chan and senior brother Yi. Some of the Five Element sect's disciples recognized the two immediately. Nangong Chan and Nangong Yi. They were the two direct disciples of the sect's sect leader. Originally, the senior officials of the Skywolf Fort and the Sun Moon sect were looking forward to seeing the two figures flying out of the Martial Emperor's secret treasure before they could see their faces clearly. When they saw their faces, Duan Lingtian and Yi, what's going on? Why hasn't any of our Skywolf Fort's disciples come out of Emperor Wu's secret treasure yet? Where's Zishang? The 5 vice fort masters of Skywolf Fort could no longer maintain their composure. They could vaguely sense that something was amiss. The senior officials from Sun Moon sect, including sect leader Chanfeng, also had a grave expression on their faces. 19 people from Sun Moon sect had gone in, and none of them had come out yet. For a moment they had a bad feeling in their hearts. Those few vice fort masters of Skywolf Fort are still waiting for their Skywolf Fort's disciples to come out? The strange behavior of the 5 vice fort masters of Skywolf Fort had alerted many disciples from 5 Element sect, Blade sect, Empyrean Temple, and Emotion Severing sect. They could not help but have a strange expression on their faces. It seems like they still don't know that all 20 of their disciples who went into Skywolf Fort have been annihilated. As long as none of us take the initiative to tell them, it's not strange that they don't know about it. The disciples from the 4 major forces whispered among themselves. Their voices were not loud, but it clearly entered the ears of the 5 vice fort masters of Skywolf Fort, causing their faces to turn pale. All the disciples from Skywolf Fort were annihilated after they entered Emperor Wu's secret treasure? What's going on? The 5 of them immediately had a grave expression on their faces. Subsequently, after they learned about the ins and outs of the matter from some of the disciples from the 4 major forces, their faces turned gloomy, and a hint of helplessness could be seen in their eyes. Zishang had failed to kill Duan Lingtian and had fallen into the bottomless abyss. There was no way he could have survived. As for the other 19 people, they had joined forces with the disciples from Sun Moon sect and Emotion Severing sect to attack Duan Lingtian, because they coveted the 9th level concept fragment in Duan Lingtian's hands. They wanted to kill Duan Lingtian and snatch the treasure. Who would have thought that 48 people would attack Duan Lingtian, and the outcome would be so dramatic? With just one sword strike, Duan Lingtian had annihilated more than half of the disciples from the 3 major forces. Those who did not die were crippled. With another sword strike, all of them were annihilated. Duan Lingtian. Why is it him? If it was someone else, the 5 vice fort masters of Skywolf Fort would have chased after him and killed him. However, this person just had to be Duan Lingtian. He was the brother Lingtian that the little witch had mentioned. Unless they were able to kill Duan Lingtian flawlessly, and without leaving any traces behind. Otherwise, the consequences were not something they could bear. Due to this reason, they could only grit their teeth and swallow their anger even though they were furious. However, even if the 5 Vice Fort Masters of Skywolf Fort could endure it, it did not mean that the senior officials from Sun Moon Sect could. When they heard that 17 of their Sun Moon Sect's disciples had died in Duan Lingtian's hands, horror dawned on their faces. Their eyes gleamed with rage as though they were about to devour someone. Duan Lingtian, how dare you kill my Sun Moon Sect's disciples? I want you dead. Chun Feng bellowed. He was ready to lead the senior officials from Sun Moon Sect to chase after Duan Lingtian and kill him to avenge the 17 disciples of Sun Moon Sect. Sect leader Chun Feng, if you dare to leave, when the 2 most outstanding people from Sun Moon Sect come out, you'll definitely die. A cold voice resonated from Guochong, the sect leader of 5 Element Sect. It was filled with indifference. Those 2 Sun Moon Sect's disciples are the best among the younger generation in Sun Moon Sect. I think it's very likely that they've obtained the profundity fragment as well. Chi Yu stood by the side and looked at the senior officials from Sun Moon Sect as he added calmly. Chi Yu's meaning was very simple. If you dare to chase after Duan Lingtian, when the 2 most outstanding disciples from Sun Moon Sect come out, not only will our 5 Element Sect kill them, but will also take away the profundity fragment that they might have obtained. Whoosh! 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 One must admit that Guochong and Chi Yu's threats were very effective. The moment their words left their mouths, all the senior officials from Sun Moon Sect, including Chun Feng, the sect leader of Sun Moon Sect, changed their expressions immediately. At the same time they glared at Guochong and Chi Yu angrily. However, none of them dared to make any move. Although they were furious that 17 disciples from Sun Moon Sect had died, the lives of the 17 disciples from Sun Moon Sect were not worth their lives. However, in their opinion, the lives of the 17 disciples were not as precious as the 2 remaining disciples. The 2 remaining disciples were the pillars of the Sun Moon Sect in the future. Moreover, just like what Chi Yu had said, the 2 most outstanding disciples among the younger generation of the Sun Moon Sect might have obtained the profundity fragment from the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Guochong, you win. Chun Feng glared at Guochong and said through gritted teeth. You flatter me, sect leader Chun Feng. Guochong smiled nonchalantly. Seeing how the group of senior officials from Sun Moon Sect did not dare to chase after Duan Lingtian due to Guochong and Chi Yu's threats, the corner of Zhang Yan's mouth twitched slightly as he stood nearby. Perhaps he was the only one who knew that the 2 Sun Moon Sect's disciples had died in Emperor Wu's secret treasure. This was because he was the one who had killed them. Of course, he was not stupid enough to tell them the truth. Although he did not think that the emotion-severing sect behind him would be afraid of the Sun Moon Sect, he still did not want to get himself into trouble. He did not want his matter to affect the sect that had nurtured him. Humph! The 5 Vice Fort Masters of Skywolf Fort snorted coldly. Their robes fluttered as they prepared to return to Skywolf Fort. However, as soon as they moved, they were stopped by a figure that resembled a ghost. It was Guochong, the sect leader of 5 Element Sect. Sect leader Gua, what's the meaning of this? Luofu, the leader of the 5 Vice Fort Masters of Skywolf Fort, had a grave expression on his face when he saw Guochong stopping them. Vice Fort Master Luo, I don't mean anything. I just want to remind all of you that if any of you dare to make a move on Duan Lingtian, the day I break through to the Martial Monarch stage will be the day Skywolf Fort is annihilated. Guochong's voice was firm and unquestionable. You! Horror dawned on Luofu and the other 4 Vice Fort Masters of Skywolf Fort. They knew very well that Guochong was not joking with them. After obtaining the Thunder Profundity Fragment, it would not take long for Guochong to break through to the Martial Monarch stage. When that time came, the 5 Element Sect would be promoted to a new second-rate force in the Northern Desert. Once Guochong broke through to the Martial Monarch stage, even the second-rate force Izumo Sect would have to think twice before making a move on the 5 Element Sect. Sect leader Gua, don't worry. We're just returning to Skywolf Fort. We have no intention of making a move on Duan Lingtian. As for those useless disciples of Skywolf Fort, they deserve to die. How dare they kill people and steal their treasures when they're not strong enough? After Luo Fu finished speaking, he no longer bothered with Guochong. He brought the other 4 vice fort masters of Skywolf Fort and flew in the direction of the ancient desert city where Skywolf Fort was located. In fact, even without Guochong's threat, they would not have dared to make a move on Duan Lingtian. Even the fort master of Skywolf Fort was afraid of that little devil. He was even willing to be her mount. One could just imagine how terrifying her background was. Sect leader Chun Feng, I believe you're a smart person as well. At this moment, Guochong looked at Chun Feng, the sect leader of Sun Moon sect. Although his tone was calm, there was a hint of threat and killing intent in it. The moment Chun Feng heard this, horror dawned on his face. However, he did not dare to voice out his anger. Duan Lingtian, who had left long ago, naturally did not know what had happened outside entrance number 2 of Emperor Wu's secret treasure. Big brother Zhang, perhaps I can help sister-in-law repair her dantian when we return this time. Duan Lingtian looked at Zhang Shouyong, who was walking side by side, and said with a smile. Boom! Duan Lingtian's words were like a bolt from the blue. It made Zhang Shouyong's face turn pale, and his body suddenly came to a halt in the air. Brother Lingtian. You're telling the truth. Chapter 1009. Of course it's true. Duan Lingtian smiled faintly. With a raise of his hand, he took out the immortal spirit herb he had obtained from Emperor Wu's secret treasure. He casually plucked a leaf from the immortal spirit herb and handed it to Zhang Shouyong. This is. Zhang Shouyong had a puzzled expression on his face as he looked at the strange leaf that Duan Lingtian handed over to him. Although he had thought of the possibility that this leaf could be used to help his wife, Wang Qiong, repair her dantian, he still found it hard to believe. This was because this was just too unbelievable. One of the 3 leaves on a strange herb could help his wife repair her dantian? Was this even possible? This is the item that can help sister-in-law repair her dantian. Duan Lingtian smiled as he said, Big brother Zhang, don't underestimate this leaf. Just this leaf alone has the ability to bring a dead person back to life and regrow flesh and bones. Even a person with a crippled body can regrow his limbs if he consumes this leaf. What? Duan Lingtian's words caused Zhang Shouyong's expression to change. When he looked at the blade of grass in his hand again, his eyes were filled with traces of shock and disbelief. This leaf could bring a dead person back to life and regrow flesh and bones? A person with a crippled body could regrow his limbs if he consumes it? At this moment, even Feng Tianwu, who was standing on the other side of Duan Lingtian and had stopped moving together with Duan Lingtian, was shocked. Her beautiful face could not help but change. In her eyes, her elder brother Duan had always been a person who could create miracles. However, when she heard that the leaf in Zhang Shouyong's hand had such a terrifying medicinal effect, she could not help but be shocked. Brother Lingtian, what kind of herb is this? Zhang Shouyong's breathing quickened, and his chest rose and fell continuously like a bellows. After a while, he finally regained his senses and looked at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze as he asked. Zhang Shouyong firmly believed Duan Lingtian's words, but he still couldn't help but be shocked. What kind of medicinal herb could actually have such a powerful and terrifying medicinal effect? It's called the immortal spirit herb. It's considered a legendary existence in the entire Cloud continent. I didn't expect to encounter it in Qingfeng Palace. Duan Lingtian said with a smile. Immortal spirit grass? When Zhang Shouyong and Feng Tianwu heard this, their eyes brightened. Just by hearing the name of this medicinal herb, one could tell that this was no ordinary medicinal herb. The legendary medicinal herb was actually obtained by you. Your luck is simply heaven-defying. Zhang Shouyong could not help but sigh. At this moment, the depths of Zhang Shouyong's eyes were filled with traces of excitement. His wife, Wang Qiong, had been unable to cultivate all these years because of her dantian, and it had already become a sore point for him. But now, his wife had the opportunity to repair her dantian and could officially begin cultivating. This made him feel excited from the bottom of his heart. The heart disease that had plagued him for so many years could finally be removed. Brother Lingtian, thank you. Zhang Shouyong thanked Duan Lingtian sincerely. He was grateful from the bottom of his heart that Duan Lingtian was willing to share such a precious medicinal herb with him. Big brother Zhang, is there a need to be so courteous between us? If it wasn't for your help in the ancient city of Everlast in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, I would have died long ago, let alone today. Duan Lingtian shook his head and said, Brother Lingtian, that's all in the past. To me it's only a slight effort, and it's not worth mentioning. Zhang Shouyong said. Big brother Zhang, perhaps it's not worth mentioning in your eyes, but in my eyes you saved my life. Even a drop of water needs to be repaid with a gushing spring, let alone a life-saving grace? Duan Lingtian said with a serious expression. If it wasn't for Zhang Shouyong's help in saving his life that year, he would have been killed long ago, let alone his current achievements. Alright, let's not talk about this anymore. Zhang Shouyong changed the topic when he saw Duan Lingtian was serious. Brother Lingtian, are you going to help Xiong Quan repair his dantian with the immortal spirit herb when you return to the Dark Han dynasty? Xiong Quan was the middle-aged man who followed Duan Lingtian all those years ago. Zhang Shouyong had a deep impression of him. That year, Xiong Quan's dantian was crippled in the Eternal Jade restaurant that they opened. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. His eyes gleamed. That year his dantian was crippled because of me. That's my responsibility. This time I can help him repair his dantian and give him an explanation. He still felt guilty toward Xiong Quan. Brother Lingtian, don't think too much. I could tell that Xiong Quan didn't blame you that year. Moreover, Xiong Quan is open-minded. Although he lost his origin energy, he must have lived well all these years. Zhang Shouyong comforted him. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. He hoped that was the case as well. With a lift of his hand, Duan Lingtian kept the immortal spirit herb in his spatial ring. The immortal spirit herb in his hand originally had 3 leaves. After giving one to Zhang Shouyong, there were only 2 left. After Zhang Shouyong kept the immortal spirit herb's leaf in his spatial ring, as though he had obtained a precious treasure, Duan Lingtian and the other 2 continued to make their way to the Dark Han dynasty at an extremely fast speed. Brother Lingtian, which level of Qing Feng Palace did you obtain the immortal spirit herb? Zhang Shouyong asked curiously along the way. He was very curious about where Duan Lingtian obtained the legendary immortal spirit herb. When Feng Tianwu heard this, she also looked at Duan Lingtian curiously. The first level, Duan Lingtian said. When I arrived at the first level, I appeared at the back of a long corridor. Along the way I could enter many stone rooms. However, as soon as I entered, the statues outside would attack me. Once you left the stone room, the statues would return to their original positions and no longer attack. Duan Lingtian learned about this from Huang Daniu. On the first level of Qing Feng Palace, every time he entered a stone room, he would destroy the statues that attacked him without exception. Therefore, he did not know that the statues would return to their original positions after he left the stone room. That's the same, Zhang Shouyong said. Feng Tianwu nodded as well. Her experience was similar. I obtained the immortal spirit herb at the end of the long corridor, on the first level of Qing Feng Palace, in the central stone room that leads to the second level. As long as you're strong enough to suppress the other 3 young powerhouses that were assigned to you, you'll be able to enter and ascend to the second level of Qing Feng Palace. Duan Lingtian said. He still remembered that the stone room was called the 4-entry 1 stone room. I didn't enter that room. I was assigned to a North Nether sect's disciple. Zhang Shouyong smiled wryly. His innate talent and strength might be considered good in a third-rate force. However, if he was placed in a second-rate force like the North Nether sect, he would only be considered ordinary. On the other hand, the North Nether sect's disciples who entered Emperor Wu's secret treasure were all elites among the younger generation in the North Nether sect. They were far from what he could compare to. I entered the stone chamber. However, I didn't see any immortal spirit herbs. What I obtained was a grade 1 spirit weapon that could increase my strength by 89%. Duan Lingtian said. Feng Tianwu said. A grade 1 spirit weapon with an 89% amplification could be considered as the best grade 1 spirit weapon. It was only slightly inferior to the grade 1 spirit weapon that Duan Lingtian could refine. Duan Lingtian was not surprised when he heard Feng Tianwu's words. No matter what, the immortal spirit herb was still a legendary herb. It was impossible for it to appear in every 4-entry 1-stone room. He had already guessed this. It was all because of his luck that he was able to obtain the immortal spirit herb. Tian Wu, what did you experience when you went up to the 2nd level? Duan Lingtian asked again. Soon after, Duan Lingtian learned about Feng Tianwu's experience in Qing Feng Palace. The only thing missing was the giant wooden figure on the 2nd level. Or perhaps, the 2nd level that Feng Tianwu was at did not have the strange stone platform that was inscribed with a mysterious inscription formation that could be combined with the broken wood in the long corridor to form a giant wooden figure. It seems like the immortal spirit herb, that strange stone platform, is unique as well. Of course, it's also possible that Tian Wu didn't activate the inscription formation in the stone platform on the 2nd level that she went through. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted as he speculated to himself. As for the rest, it's more or less the same. In the bumpy road on the 4th level, Tian Wu could only retreat in the face of the earth energy that was equivalent to the strength of 1,500 ancient horned dragons, because she did not forcefully activate the fire profundity. Everything was similar to what he had guessed. When Duan Lingtian and the other two continued to make their way to the Dark Han Dynasty, boom, 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 boom. In a remote mountain range in the Dark Han Dynasty, a series of loud noises suddenly resonated from a dark cave. The mountain range began to shake violently as though the ground was shaking. After the cave shook, an old man with black mist exuding from his body rushed out of the cave. The old man had a pair of blood-red eyes that did not contain any emotions. All of a sudden, the old man raised his hands and held his head tightly. At the same time he bent down and cried out in pain. The old man's voice was heart-wrenching as though he was going through some kind of torture. I'm Zhao Ming. I'm Zhao Ming. Yes, I'm Zhao Ming. 7-star sword sect. Azure Forest Trisect. Duan Lingtian. Yes, I'm Duan Lingtian. He's my enemy. He's my enemy. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. Finally, the old man stopped screaming. His body straightened up again. His blood-red eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at his surroundings in a daze. Where's this place? The old man frowned as he tried to recall. However, he realized he could not remember anything at all. Duan Lingtian. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Soon, the old man stopped thinking about it and roared hysterically with a sullen face. Chapter 10:10. At the same time that the old man roared, the black mist around his body began to churn and boil like boiling water. For a time, the airflow in the surrounding air was completely compressed together, setting off a series of thunderous air explosions. Not only that, but at the same time as the explosion, waves of invisible air waves swept out, turning into a vast gale that blew in all directions. At once, with the old man as the center, the vegetation in the nearby mountain forest began to sway. The birds that were originally resting on the trees were startled and flew up into the sky before disappearing. Whoosh! Without anyone noticing, a black figure appeared in the sky above the mountain range. This semi-finished product seems to be not bad. However, he has an obsession with hatred in his heart. It's still not enough to completely control him, the black figure muttered to himself. The owner of the black figure muttered in a low voice, seemingly dissatisfied. Now I can only let him take his revenge. As long as he takes his revenge, his obsession will naturally disappear. At that time I'll be able to completely suppress his will and turn him into a real walking corpse. Then I'll be able to completely control him. However, with his current state, he'll be awake from time to time. I'm afraid it'll take some time to find his enemy. Whoosh! The black figure appeared out of thin air and disappeared into thin air, as though he had never appeared before. At the same time, in the mountain range below, the old man Zhao Ming, who was standing in the air, was completely stunned. At this moment he raised his head and looked at the sky above him. His face was filled with shock, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. How's this possible? In the sky, after the heaven and earth energy stirred, it gathered into the heaven and earth phenomenon. Silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared one after another. They descended majestically and appeared in front of Zhao Ming's eyes. It was a great shock to Zhao Ming. At a glance, the heaven and earth phenomenon in front of him had at least 7 to 8,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. The strength of 7 to 8,000 ancient horned dragons. Is this my strength? At this moment, Zhao Ming felt the majestic strength in his body. His eyes were filled with shock, and at the same time, he could not help but be pleasantly surprised. The strength he possessed now was a few hundred times stronger than before. No, my strength doesn't seem to be origin energy anymore. Moreover, I seem to be unable to communicate with the concept. What the hell is going on? Very quickly, as Zhao Ming raised his hand, a wave of energy that was as black as ink appeared in his hand. The black energy continuously surged, and strands of black aura flickered in the surroundings. This power isn't origin energy or concept, but it seems to be even stronger than origin energy and concept combined. What kind of power is that? As Zhao Ming muttered to himself, he casually raised his hand and struck out with his palm. Suddenly, the ink-black power in his hand turned into a huge palm that was surrounded by black fog. It whizzed out and disappeared in front of his eyes. Boom! A loud bang was heard and crushed stones flew everywhere. Zhao Ming's palm had blasted a bottomless pit in the nearby mountain wall. Even Zhao Ming was shocked by the power of his palm. He stared at his palm in a daze for a long time. This is my power. Is this still me? Zhao Ming was stunned. He was completely stunned. No, I remember that I seem to have been crippled by that Duan Lingtian. My 4 limbs were also crippled by him. What the hell is going on? Zhao Ming's eyes were filled with confusion. He kept shaking his head. He could not figure it out. Could it be that all this is just a dream? If it's a dream, why is it so real? Moreover, why am I here? Why do I have such a strange power? Zhao Ming was puzzled. At the same time, he began to recall. Very quickly, perhaps it was because he was recalling. A piercing pain came from the depths of Zhao Ming's mind, causing him to scream hysterically again. After a while, the scream stopped. Zhao Ming's scarlet eyes dimmed completely at this moment, as if they had lost their luster. At this moment, Zhao Ming seemed to have changed into another person. His entire body was emitting an extremely cold aura, and his eyes were lifeless. He was like a walking corpse. Whoosh! Zhao Ming's figure flashed and flew out of the remote mountain range. He wandered without any direction. At the same time, it seemed like he did not have a destination. Outside the Dark Han Dynasty's capital, 3 figures flew through the air and stopped in the sky. Brother Ling Tian, Miss Tian Wu, are you really not going to return to the Zhang clan's estate with me? Zhang Shouyong looked at the purple-clad young man and red-clad lady before him and asked. The latter was Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu, who returned to the Dark Han Dynasty with Zhang Shouyong. Even if they had to take Zhang Shouyong's speed into consideration, Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu still did not spend too much time to return to the Dark Han Dynasty. Big brother Zhang, go back and accompany sister-in-law first. As for the 2 of us, you don't have to worry about us. Don't tell me you're worried that we'll encounter danger in the Dark Han Dynasty? Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. That's not it. I just feel that Chong'er's Dantian was repaired with your help. No matter what, the 2 of us have to thank you properly. Zhang Shouyong said seriously. Big brother Zhang, you don't have to be so courteous with me. We'll take our leave first. The moment Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, he had already made his move and left. The red figure that was like a fire elf followed Duan Lingtian like a shadow and disappeared before Zhang Shouyong's eyes together. Zhang Shouyong could not help but shake his head and smile wryly. Brother Lingtian and Miss Tianwu are a perfect match. They're both so energetic. Zhang Shouyong shook his head and smiled before he turned around and flew towards the sky above the capital. He only descended when he arrived above a spacious estate. His movements were as smooth as flowing water. Zhang clan's estate. Chong'er. After Zhang Shouyong landed, he ignored the shocked gazes of the surrounding servant girls and charged into a large courtyard with an excited expression on his face. This was the place where he and his wife Wang Qiong used to live. On the other side, elder brother Duan, are you going to look for Xiong Quan? Feng Tianwu followed by Duan Lingtian's side and asked curiously. There's no rush for Xiong Quan. Let's go according to the principle of nearest. We'll make a trip to Clarity City first. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as he spoke. Clarity City? Feng Tianwu nodded. Although she did not know why Duan Lingtian was going there, she was sensible enough to not ask, because she knew that Duan Lingtian surely had a reason for going there. Just as Feng Tianwu thought, Duan Lingtian did indeed have a reason for going there. He went to Clarity City only to look for one person. Hu Li. Hu Li, this name was slightly distant even to the current Duan Lingtian, but he would never be able to forget this name. He still remembered that not long after he entered the Seven-Star Sword Sect, he entered the primeval forest behind the Seven-Star Sword Sect to test his quake energy, and he just happened to encounter a small team formed by Seven-Star Sword Sect disciples. The small team had a total of 3 people: Hu Li, Shirlan, and Xiao Fei. Xiao Fei was a vicious person. He tried to harm him many times in the primeval forest, but he did not succeed. In the end, he was heavily injured and almost killed by him. However, due to Hu Li and Shirlan's pleading, Xiao Fei was spared. However, all of that was only the beginning of a disaster. After that, Xiao Fei asked his brother to help him take revenge. He forced Shirlan to fall off the cliff and crippled Hu Li's leg. After that, although he killed Xiao Fei and his brother to take revenge for Shirlan and Hu Li, it was impossible to save Shirlan's life. It was the same for Hu Li's leg. However, now that he had obtained the immortal spirit herb, he could heal Hu Li's leg. He still remembered that after Hu Li left, he had asked someone to tell him that his family was at the Hu clan in Clarity City. Clarity City was a city that was neither big nor small. After asking for directions, Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu arrived at this unfamiliar city. To the two of them who had left the Dark Han dynasty and gone to the foreign lands to see the world, Clarity City could only be considered as a small city that could not be any smaller. After arriving at Clarity City, Duan Lingtian asked for the location of the Hu clan and brought Feng Tianwu along. Hu Li, you're talking about young Master Li, right? What a coincidence. A few months ago, after young Master Li found out that the Seven-Star Sword Sect had been rebuilt, he returned to the Seven-Star Sword Sect and said he wanted to do something for the Seven-Star Sword Sect. At the entrance of the Hu clan estate, Duan Lingtian found out about Hu Li's whereabouts from a Hu clan disciple. He did not expect Hu Li to return to the Seven-Star Sword Sect. Since the two of you know young Master Li, could it be that you're his friends? The Hu clan disciple asked. Exactly. Duan Lingtian nodded. Since the two of you are young Master Li's friends, you can rest in our Hu clan estate for a few days. Once I report to the Patriarch will definitely send someone to the Seven-Star Sword Sect to inform young Master Li. The Hu clan disciple said again. There's no need. We'll go to the Seven-Star Sword Sect to look for him ourselves. Duan Lingtian shook his head and left Clarity City with Feng Tianwu to the Seven-Star Sword Sect. When he arrived at the Seven-Star Sword Sect, everything before his eyes surprised Duan Lingtian. Compared to when he left the last time, the Seven-Star Sword Sect had undergone tremendous changes. Everything seemed to have returned to its former prosperity. That kid Mou did really well. Duan Lingtian could not help but praise in his heart when he saw the scene before his eyes. This time, Duan Lingtian did not disturb the others when he returned. After bidding farewell to Feng Tianwu, he changed into the inner court disciple's uniform that he wore in the Seven-Star Sword Sect before entering the main peak of the Seven-Star Sword Sect, Dubhe Peak. Senior brother. Do you know where Senior Brother Power of Hu is? After entering Dubhe Peak, Duan Lingtian asked an inner court disciple around the age of 30. You just entered our Seven-Star Sword Sect, right? Chapter 10-11. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded his head when faced with the question of the Seven-Star Sword Sect inner court disciple before him. No wonder. Senior brother Hu Li is usually in Fecta Hall, and he's now the substitute peak master of our Seven-Star Sword Sect's Fecta Peak. The inner court disciple said. Fecta Peak substitute peak master? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned. This was something that he'd never imagined. To be able to become the substitute peak master of Fecta Peak, Hu Li's current strength is probably at the void initiation stage or above, right? Duan Lingtian was secretly shocked in his heart, and felt that it was slightly unbelievable. He knew of Hu Li's natural talent. Although it wasn't bad, it was still quite difficult for him to break through to the void initiation stage in these few years. Perhaps Hu Li has experienced some fortuitous encounters in these few years. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Filled with curiosity, Duan Lingtian arrived near Fekta Hall, and he could vaguely see many seven-star sword sect inner court disciples standing there and looking towards Fekta Hall from afar. Whoosh! 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 When Duan Lingtian approached Fekta Peak, he could vaguely hear a wave of ear-piercing howls of the wind, and it was a swift figure that was constantly changing its figure. Senior brother Hu Li is really formidable. Nonsense. If he wasn't formidable, how could he be the substitute peak master of our seven-star sword sect's Fekta Peak? I heard that senior brother Hu Li's leg was crippled by someone in our seven-star sword sect. There's such a thing? That year, senior brother Hu Li's leg was crippled by someone in our seven-star sword sect. And it was senior brother Duan Lingtian who personally took revenge for him. I found out about this from some senior brothers and senior sisters. What? Senior brother Duan Lingtian? The figure in the rumors of our seven-star sword sect? He's not even 30 years old, but is already the #1 expert in our seven-star sword sect? The group of seven-star sword sect inner court disciples that stood near Fekta Hall discussed animatedly. Initially, the topic of their discussion was power of Hu, but in the end it shifted to Duan Lingtian. Their words were filled with admiration for Duan Lingtian. If they knew that the person they were talking about was not far away from them, who knew what they would think? Duan Lingtian naturally paid no attention to the discussion of these seven-star sword sect inner court disciples. His gaze landed on the swift figure outside Fekta Hall. This figure gave him a familiar feeling, as if he had met him before. It was a young man in his early 30s with a determined face. Although many years had passed, Duan Lingtian could still see a familiar outline in his face. With just a glance, he recognized the young man. Power of Hu. Although one of Power of Hu's legs was crippled, his speed was not slower than a healthy person when he used his other leg to move. In fact, it was even faster than a healthy person. Suddenly, in Duan Lingtian's field of vision, Power of Hu accelerated abruptly, as if he had transformed into a bolt of lightning. Whoosh! Power of Hu's entire body tilted as his remaining leg fell down. Just as he was about to fall to the ground, he moved. Bang! Bang! Power of Hu's arms that contained skyrocketing origin energy and strands of green energy slammed onto the ground violently, causing 2 ear-piercing loud bangs. In the next moment, Power of Hu borrowed the force of the impact and shot out like an arrow that was shot out from a bow toward the mountain wall at the side. Bang! A loud bang reverberated in the air. It was Power of Hu's remaining leg that was shot out like a cannonball. The origin energy that was entwined with purple energy slammed onto the mountain wall violently. It was obvious that he knew that Duan Lingtian had won first place in the Darkhan Dynasty's martial competition, and became the strongest person among the younger generation of the Darkhan Dynasty. You're quite well informed. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. I originally thought that I'd be able to catch up to you after cultivating wholeheartedly at home all these years. In the end, I realized that I can't compare to you at all. Everything you do can be said to be earth-shattering. Power of Hu sighed. In the past, he'd always taken Duan Lingtian as his goal, and he'd cultivated bitterly to obtain his current accomplishments. But who would have thought that when he thought he could catch up to Duan Lingtian, shocking news had spread to Clarity City, spread to the Hu clan and spread to his ears. Duan Lingtian had used his own strength to suppress the higher-ups of the Azure Forest Trisect, and take revenge for the Seven-Star Sword Sect. After that, he'd even assisted the new sect leader of the Seven-Star Sword Sect, MOU, to rebuild the Seven-Star Sword Sect. All those years ago, when I found out about the news of the Seven-Star Sword Sect being annihilated, I'd inquired about you many times, but I didn't find anything. But I never imagined that you'd give me such a great surprise without anyone noticing. Power of Hu sighed with emotion. After I found out that you'd annihilated the Azure Forest Trisect and rebuilt the Seven-Star Sword Sect, I returned to the sect with the hope that I could do something for the sect within my ability. But unfortunately, you'd already left when I returned. As he finished speaking, Power of Hu laughed heartily. But it's not too late for you to return now. Today I'll have to get drunk with you. There's no hurry. Duan Lingtian shook his head. And then he said, I returned to the 7-star sword sect mainly to look for you. As Duan Lingtian spoke, he looked at Power of Hu's severed leg. To look for me? Power of Hu was stunned. How did you know I was here? Could it be that you went to Clarity City? Exactly. Duan Lingtian nodded. I went to your Hu clan and found out that you'd returned to the 7-star sword sect, so I directly rushed over. This time I only came to look for you, and I didn't intend to alarm anyone else. No wonder you didn't allow me to call out your name in public earlier. Power of Hu came to a sudden understanding. Power of Hu, take this. With a raise of his hand, a medicinal herb that flickered with a green light appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand, and he casually plucked a piece and passed it to Power of Hu. It was Power of Hu's first time seeing a green herb that glowed. He could not help but stare at it in shock. Although he did not recognize what it was, his intuition told him that it was not an ordinary herb. This is a medicinal herb that can regrow your severed leg. Duan Lingtian smiled. Duan Lingtian spoke casually, but when his words entered Power of Hu's ears, it was like a clap of thunder. He would not rest until he was shocked to death. This blade of grass can help me regrow my legs? Power of Hu's face was filled with shock. Although he did not doubt Duan Lingtian's words, he still felt that it was a little unbelievable. Give it a try. First, remove the scar on your leg and consume this immortal spirit herb. Then you'll know that I'm not lying. Duan Lingtian naturally saw the disbelief on Power of Hu's face, so he continued to speak. Power of Hu took a deep breath and suppressed his inexplicable excitement. With a raise of his hand, the origin energy that was intertwined with green energy transformed into a saber and directly cut off the scar on his severed leg. Humph! At the same time that fresh blood spurted out, Power of Hu, who was sweating profusely on his forehead, groaned in pain. Then he stuffed the herb that flickered with a green light into his mouth, chewed a few times and swallowed it. A moment later, wisps of green light appeared on Power of Hu's body for no reason. The green light twined around his body as if it had a life of its own. Immediately after, the green light on his body began to converge on his severed leg, completely condensing at the wound on his severed leg. How does it feel? Seeing this, Duan Lingtian asked. It's a little itchy. As the green light converged at the wound on his severed leg, Power of Hu felt the pain gradually disappear. However, he felt waves of numbness and itchiness coming from the wound on his leg. Chapter 10-12. Although Duan Lingtian knew about the heaven-defying effects of the immortal spirit herb, he only knew about it from the memories of the reincarnation Emperor Wu. Even the reincarnation Emperor Wu had never seen the real immortal spirit herb, let alone its heaven-defying effects. His knowledge was limited to the legends. Chi, chi, chi. Suddenly, a crisp sound entered Duan Lingtian's ears and attracted Duan Lingtian's attention. At the same time, Duan Lingtian was shocked to discover that at the spot where the green light gathered on Power of Hu's broken leg, bones, flesh, and skin were rapidly growing. Under the green light, the bones, flesh, and skin that appeared out of thin air were no different from Power of Hu's original body. This Power of Hu was stunned, completely stunned. Heavens! His leg was actually growing. His legs were not saplings or saplings. They were the flesh, bones, and skin of a living person, and they were growing rapidly before his eyes. First his thigh grew out, then his knee. Behind his knee was his calf. After his calf had completely grown out, the green light dimmed slightly, and the speed of his foot's growth slowed down. Power of Hu could not help but hold his breath when he saw this. He was really worried that the green light would disappear. At this moment, he could vaguely sense that the green light that gathered on his broken leg was the immortal spirit herb's effect. Once it disappeared, his broken leg would stop growing. This is amazing. In less than half an hour, Duan Lingtian witnessed a miracle with his own eyes. A miracle of regrowing a broken leg. Duan Lingtian's breathing quickened when he saw Power of Hu's foot growing out. According to the memories of the reincarnation Emperor Wu, even the royal grade resurrection pill that he refined when he was still in his prime has limitations, even though it's said to be able to revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. First of all, the royal grade resurrection pill is for those who are pretending to be dead. It's impossible for the royal grade resurrection pill to revive a person who has no vitality at all. Secondly, the regrow flesh and bones is for those who are missing a piece of flesh or skin due to an injury. If it's a broken leg like Power of Who's, it's difficult to regrow it. Although the royal grade resurrection pill was the best healing pill on Cloud Continent in the memories of the reincarnation Emperor Wu, it did not have the effect of regrowing a broken bone. However, the immortal spirit pill could regrow a broken bone. At this moment, Duan Lingtian witnessed all of this with his own eyes. Reincarnation Emperor Wu had many regrets after experiencing 2 reincarnations. Not being able to see the legendary immortal spirit herb was one of his regrets. Not being able to experience the effects of the legendary immortal spirit grass is one of his biggest regrets. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted. Since he had merged with the memories of the reincarnation Emperor Wu, he knew the reincarnation Emperor Wu's regrets like the back of his hand. Chi, chi, chi. Wherever the green light passed, the broken bone would regrow flesh and skin. Soon after, Power of Who's foot had completely regrown. At the same time, the crisp sound stopped abruptly, and the green light disappeared as well. Power of Who's new leg was perfectly symmetrical with his other leg. There was no disharmony at all. Naturally, the only flaw was that Power of Who's new leg was too fair. Instead of saying it was fair, it was more appropriate to say it was delicate. The skin on the outside was as fair and smooth as a baby's skin. Haha. Power of Who, the skin on your leg is even fairer than those little girls' legs. Duan Lingtian laughed and teased. Power of Who's face turned red when he heard this, but his eyes were filled with excitement. Whoosh! 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 Power of Who stomped on the ground and flew across the Tianji Palace at lightning speed. Sometimes he would turn left, sometimes he would turn right. His speed was as fast as lightning. After experimenting for a while, Power of Who discovered something. Compared to the leg that he usually trained, his new leg was even better in terms of strength and explosive power. Ha 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 ha. I, Power of Who, am no longer a cripple. I, Power of Who, am no longer a cripple. Power of Who laughed heartily after he came to a sudden stop. As he laughed, his eyes were filled with tears of joy. All these years, he had been living with determination. In order to surpass Duan Lingtian, he had set an extremely harsh goal for himself. On the surface, he didn't seem to care much about the fact that he had lost a leg. However, how could he not care about it in his heart? If he could, who would be willing to be a crippled person who had lost a leg? Power of Who's frustration over the years had accumulated to its limit. Now that he had vented it out, it could not be contained. It took him a long time to calm down. Seeing Power of Who's new leg, a smile appeared on Duan Lingtian's face. He was happy for Power of Who. Finally, after laughing for a while, Power of Who suppressed the excitement in his heart. Duan Lingtian, thank you. At the same time, he looked at Duan Lingtian and thanked him earnestly. His tone was filled with sincerity. If it were not for Duan Lingtian, he would have been a cripple for the rest of his life. However, Duan Lingtian had turned him back into a normal person. This made him feel emotional from the bottom of his heart. From today onward, he would no longer have to face the strange gazes of others. He, Power of Who, had stood up with dignity. There's no need for thanks between us. Duan Lingtian shook his head. Then he seemed to have recalled something and could not help but sigh. It's a pity for Shirlan. Although the immortal spirit herb in my hand is magical, it can't save Shirlan's life. That year, it's my fault for cooperating with Shirlan to plead mercy for Xiao Fei. Otherwise, Shirlan wouldn't have died. When he heard Duan Lingtian's words, a beautiful figure appeared in Power of Who's mind. Unknowingly, tears welled up in his eyes. He was slightly moved. If he had supported Duan Lingtian to kill Xiao Fei back then, the things that happened later might not have happened. Shirlan would not have died, and his leg would not have been crippled. All these years, every time he looked at his broken leg, he only had one thought. He had only himself to blame for this. It's all in the past. You don't have to blame yourself. Moreover, who would have thought that Xiao Fei would be so ungrateful and harm both of you who saved his life? Duan Lingtian comforted him. Power of Who nodded. After a while, his emotions gradually stabilized. Duan Lingtian, you're really not going to see the sect leader? The sect leader has always talked about you. After Power of Hu's emotions calmed down, he couldn't help but ask Duan Lingtian. The sect leader he spoke of was the current sect leader of the Seven-Star Sword sect, MOU. The outer court disciple who acted as a coachman and had a low status in the Seven-Star Sword sect, had unknowingly risen to become the new sect leader of the Seven-Star Sword sect. There's no need. I'll come back if I have time in the future. Duan Lingtian shook his head and left Fekta Hall after bidding farewell to Power of Hu. He came in a hurry and left in a hurry. Power of Hu followed Duan Lingtian out of Fekta Hall, couldn't help but be shocked when he saw Duan Lingtian's figure vanish into thin air before his eyes. Exactly how strong is Duan Lingtian's current strength? Power of Hu gasped, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. Being able to meet a monstrous martial artist like Duan Lingtian in this lifetime of mine, it can be said that my life wasn't in vain. Unknowingly, the astonishment and Power of Hu's eyes faded away and was replaced by a flickering bright light. A faint smile faintly appeared on his face. After leaving Fekta Hall, Duan Lingtian wasn't in a hurry to go look for Feng Tianwu. Since I'm already here, I'll go look for Peak Master Qin Xiang and ask her which power Kerr and Little Fei are in the foreign lands. Two beautiful figures appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind. They were his two fiancés, Kerr and Li Fei. That year, Kerr and Li Fei followed Qin Xiang and headed to the power in the foreign lands that Qin Xiang's sister was in to celebrate her birthday. Since then, Kerr and Li Fei had stayed in the power in the foreign lands and hadn't returned until now. It was naturally impossible for him to not miss those two little girls. Peak Master Qin Xiang. Duan Lingtian didn't hesitate in the slightest to directly head to Alcade Hall and look for Qin Xiang. Qin Xiang just happened to be drinking tea before the pavilion in Alcade Hall, and she couldn't help but be shocked when she saw the unexpected guest before her. Yet she heaved a sigh of relief when she saw the appearance of the person that had arrived clearly. But her eyes were filled with slight astonishment. Looks like your strength has improved greatly during this trip to the foreign lands to participate in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Qin Xiang looked seriously at Duan Lingtian as she sighed with emotion. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded, and then he went straight to the point. Peak Master Qin Xiang, I know what you want to ask. Qin Xiang said frankly, you want to ask me which power in the foreign lands Kerr and Li Fei are in, right? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. I'm not afraid you'll laugh at me if I tell you. Even though I've been to the power in the foreign lands that my sister is in, I don't know exactly what power it is. Qin Xiang laughed bitterly. Needless to say, Duan Lingtian had never imagined that Qin Xiang would answer him like this. He felt even more disbelief. Didn't Qin Xiang go to that power in the foreign lands? How could she possibly not know exactly what power that power in the foreign lands was? I indeed don't know exactly what power that power is. The only thing I know is that power stands on a snow peak, and the snow peak is basically filled with white-clothed female disciples, said Qin Xiang. A female sect? Duan Lingtian's brows raised as he asked curiously. Not all of them. Apart from the snow-capped peak, there's also a towering volcano in that faction. When I went to celebrate my sister's birthday that day, people came from that volcano as well, and it was a group of male martial artists in fiery red robes. The volcano and Snow Peak seem to belong to the same power, said Qin Xiang. Snow Peak? Volcano? Duan Lingtian couldn't help but frown when he heard this, and at the same time, he searched through the memories of Emperor Wu, yet he came up empty-handed in the end. Chapter 1013. The second lifetime of reincarnation Emperor Wu was already 10,000 years ago. According to the memories of reincarnation Emperor Wu, there seem to only be two great ancient clans on Cloud Continent that can be passed down for 10,000 years. At the same time that Duan Lingtian searched through the memories of reincarnation Emperor Wu's two lifetimes, he couldn't help but think in his heart. In the memories of reincarnation Emperor Wu, the gap between his first lifetime and second lifetime was similarly 10,000 years. The world had changed in 10,000 years. During his second lifetime, only the two great ancient clans remained from his first lifetime, which was 10,000 years ago, among the numerous forces on Cloud Continent that were passed down from his first lifetime. The other forces that he knew of during his first lifetime had practically been reduced to the dust of history during his second lifetime and ceased to exist. Even if they still existed, they had already completely declined and were struggling at death's door. So, the force that Ke and Little Fei are in should be a force that appeared after reincarnation. Emperor Wu reincarnated through the 3 lives rebirth technique in his second lifetime. This was something that Duan Lingtian could be 100% sure of now. Although Qin Xiang didn't know the exact name of the foreign lands force that Ke and Li Fei were in, Duan Lingtian still obtained important clues from her. Snow peaks and volcanoes. There shouldn't be many forces in the foreign lands that coexisted with these 2 forces. In the future, when I go to the foreign lands again, I can use this clue to inquire about it properly. As long as that force isn't a mediocre force, I should be able to inquire about it. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. When he thought about how he would have the opportunity to see his fiancée Ke and Little Fei again soon, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but reveal a brilliant smile on his face. After bidding farewell to Qin Xiang, Duan Lingtian left Arcade Hall hastily and went to meet up with Feng Tianwu. After meeting up with Feng Tianwu, he still had to find Xiong Quan and help him repair his dantian. Just as Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu were meeting up, a few uninvited guests had arrived at the 5-element sect's residence in the eastern region of the northern desert far away in the foreign lands. 5-element sect. Hand over Duan Lingtian. A loud and clear voice like a clap of thunder shook the clouds in the sky and clearly transmitted into the 5 peaks of the 5-element sect's encampment. For a time, the upper echelons and disciples in the 5 peaks of the 5-element sect felt as though they were facing a great enemy. Who are you? He wants our 5-element sect to hand over senior brother Lingtian. The person who came should be from the second-rate force, Izumo sect. Senior martial brother Duan Lingtian has killed 2 of the most outstanding youths in Izumo sect. Sure enough, Izumo sect can't hold back anymore, and is coming to our 5-element sect for trouble. Soon many of the 5-element sect's upper echelons and disciples guessed the identity of the person who had arrived. As it turned out, they were right. Whoosh! 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 Soon after, silhouettes shot up into the sky from the 5 peaks of the 5-element sect. They were the upper echelons of the 5-element sect led by 3 people. In just a blink of an eye, they arrived at the sky and confronted the person who had just arrived. There were a total of 4 people who had arrived. The person in the lead was a sturdy old man with an awe-inspiring aura. He merely stood there quietly. The profound aura that seemed to be able to merge with heaven and earth caused the 5-element sect's upper echelons to turn solemn. All they could feel was an invisible pressure that extended from the old man's body and shrouded their bodies. It was so oppressive that they could barely breathe. After 30 breaths of time, if all of you don't hand over Duan Lingtian, the 5-element sect will cease to exist. Tong Shan's voice was calm, but it was filled with a thick killing intent. At the same time, his eyes were filled with viciousness and ruthlessness. It was as though he was about to devour someone. Senior Tong Shan, I'm afraid you still don't know, right? Back when we were still in Emperor Wu's secret treasure, Duan Lingtian had already announced that he was leaving our 5-element sect. He's no longer a disciple of our 5-element sect. Under such circumstances, you still want to target our 5-element sect? Don't tell me that your Izumo sect is not afraid of becoming the laughingstock of the northern desert? Tiangu said nonchalantly. When he reached the end of his sentence, a hint of ridicule and mockery could be heard in his tone. You don't have to worry about that. I'll say it again. Either you hand over Duan Lingtian or the 5-element sect will be annihilated. Tong Shan's voice turned colder when he reached the end of his sentence. Senior Tong Shan, I've already said that Duan Lingtian has already left our 5-element sect. He's no longer a disciple of our 5-element sect. Even we don't know where he went. Tiangu said again. Do you think I'll believe you? Tong Shan sneered. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not, Senior Tong Shan. That's the truth. Also, the reason our sect leader and Wood Peak's Peak Master aren't in the sect is because they're busy cultivating and making a breakthrough. However, before they left, they've already said that if anyone from Izumo sect dares to touch even a strand of hair from our 5-element sect while they're away, they'll definitely pay a visit to Izumo sect after they've made a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage. Tiangu grinned and said unhurriedly, "A threat. A blatant threat." Currently, Tiangu was threatening Tong Shan. It caused Tong Shan's face to turn completely grave. Martial monarch stage. One had to admit that Tiangu's words had a certain deterrent effect. It was not just the people Tong Shan brought with him. Even Tong Shan himself could not help but have a change of expression when he heard Tiangu's threat. Martial monarch stage? Do you think it's so easy to make a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage? Tong Shan could not help but sneer when he heard Tiangu's words. Among the people present on the scene, only he had the right to speak about this. This was because he himself was a powerhouse who had made a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage. Our sect leader has already comprehended the 9th level advanced wind concept and 9th level advanced thunder concept. With the help of the wind profundity fragment and thunder profundity fragment, it's not difficult for him to make a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage. Tiangu did not care about Tong Shan's sneer. As for our Peak Master of Wood Peak, he has comprehended the 9th level advanced water concept and 9th level advanced water concept. Since he has comprehended two 9th level void transformation concepts that are completely opposite to each other, it's only a matter of time before he makes a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage. It had to be said that Tiangu's words finally caused Tong Shan's expression to change. Even the three people behind Tong Shan had a change of expression on their faces as well. The 5-element sect had obtained 2 profundity fragments. Moreover, it seemed like the sect leader of the 5-element sect had taken them away to cultivate. It was obvious that he was hiding somewhere to comprehend the profundity so that he could make a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage in one fell swoop. Moreover, the Peak Master of Wood Peak of the 5-element sect had actually comprehended the 9th level void transformation concept of water and fire. It was not difficult for a powerhouse at the peak of the void to make a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage. It was only a matter of time. In other words, in the near future, the 5-element sect would have 2 more martial monarch powerhouses. At that time, even if the 2 of them were no match for Tong Shan, it would be as easy as cutting grass for them to kill the other people from Izumo sect. Tong Shan's face turned green and pale. Only other martial monarch powerhouses could make a martial monarch powerhouse like him react in such a manner. "Let's go." Tong Shan called out to the 3 people behind him and turned around to leave. It had to be said that Tong Shan did not dare to do anything to the 5-element sect after he found out about their trump card. Unless he could find the sect leader of 5-element sect and the Peak Master of Wood Peak and kill them before they made a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage, he would be able to prevent future troubles. Otherwise, he did not dare to take the risk. "Senior Tong Shan, I know where Duan Lingtian is." Later on, he wanted to kill Duan Lingtian even more. Yet he was instead tricked by Duan Lingtian into entering an inscription formation in the Darkstone Empire, and was trapped within it. After the dynasty martial competition ended, Duan Lingtian's strength increased greatly and far surpassed Zhao Ming. After he entered the inscription formation once more and killed the other elder of the Azure Forest Trisect, he crippled Zhao Ming's dantian and crippled Zhao Ming's 4 limbs. At that time, when he left the inscription formation, he thought that Zhao Ming would spend the rest of his life in terror that was worse than death. But never had he imagined that he would encounter Zhao Ming here today. Moreover, the current Zhao Ming seemed to be completely different from before. Zhao Ming gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. Isn't this Zhao Ming supposed to be a cripple? How could he possibly appear here? Moreover, he seems to possess a formidable strength. Duan Lingtian's expression was slightly unsightly, and his spiritual force stretched out with the intention of detecting Zhao Ming's cultivation. However, he quickly noticed. When his spiritual force approached the black mist that suffused the surface of Zhao Ming's body, it seemed as if it had entered into a ball of cotton and completely vanished, and he was utterly unable to detect Zhao Ming's cultivation. With my current spiritual force, I'm even able to detect the cultivation of a 9th level void transformation stage martial artist. However, I can't detect Zhao Ming's cultivation with my spiritual power. Duan Lingtian's expression became even more unsightly. At the same time, a bad premonition arose in his heart. Could it be that he isn't Zhao Ming? Instead, it's a person that looks exactly like Zhao Ming? In next to no time, a fluke thought suddenly arose in Duan Lingtian's heart. But this thought had only just arisen when it was mercilessly crushed by the old man that stood nearby. Duan Lingtian. I remember now. You're Duan Lingtian. You're Duan Lingtian. The scarlet-red eyes of the old man in the distance that were originally dim instantly had a bit of brilliance, and it seemed as if it was filled with life. After that, he stared at Duan Lingtian and gnashed his teeth as he roared. It's really Zhao Ming. Duan Lingtian's heart jerked when he saw the savage and hatred revealed on the old man's face, and his expression completely sank. Ha 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 ha. Duan Lingtian, I've finally found you. Today, not only will I kill you, I'll even annihilate the 7-star sword sect that you rebuilt. Presently, Zhao Ming had recovered his senses from his initial daze, and he looked at Duan Lingtian as he laughed wildly, and his laughter was filled with ruthlessness and hatred. Zhao Ming, I never expected that you're still alive. Duan Lingtian's eyes flickered with cold lights as he spoke in a low voice. You naturally want me to die, but unfortunately you weren't able to kill me. You didn't kill me that day, but I'll kill you today. Remember this properly on the road to hell. If you don't pull out the roots, it'll grow again when the spring breeze blows. As Zhao Ming finished speaking, he actually started to educate Duan Lingtian. I was able to cripple you that day, and I can kill you today as well. Duan Lingtian spoke coldly. He was extremely confident towards his current strength. Although he was unable to see through how strong Zhao Ming's current cultivation was, as far as he was concerned, it ought to be impossible for Zhao Ming to defeat him. After all, when Zhao Ming's dantian and limbs were crippled by him, Zhao Ming was only a void initiation stage martial artist. Now, only a little over a year had passed since he crippled Zhao Ming that day. As far as he was concerned, in merely a little over a year, even if Zhao Ming had a fortuitous encounter, it was still impossible for Zhao Ming to defeat him. Is that so? Zhao Ming laughed when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. His laughter was filled with arrogance. Duan Lingtian, I won't be in a hurry to kill you today. I'll let you have a good taste of despair just like what you did to me last time. Amidst his laughter, the black fog around Zhao Ming's body fluctuated, emitting waves of terrifying aura. Boom! 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 Subsequently, when the black fog around Zhao Ming's body fluctuated, the airflow in the air was compressed, setting off waves of thunderous air explosions that shook the hearts of people. What a powerful strength! Duan Lingtian's expression changed. Feng Tianwu's beautiful face, who stood by his side, also changed slightly. Whoosh! At the same time, the heaven and earth energy above Zhao Ming's head stirred and finally gathered into the heaven and earth phenomenon. Silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared before Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu's eyes one after another, and the number continued to increase. 100, 200, 300, 1,000. It was still increasing. The strength of 3,000 ancient horned dragons. Chapter 10-15. Duan Lingtian could not help but be horrified when he saw the scene before his eyes. Even with the help of the quasi-royal grade spirit sword and his full strength, his strength was only equivalent to the strength of 3,000 ancient horned dragons. However, Zhao Ming had not even used his spirit weapon yet, and he had already displayed such a powerful strength. His strength is still increasing? Soon after, Duan Lingtian's eyes could not help but narrow. Heavens! What did he just see? The heaven and earth phenomenon above Zhao Ming's head, the number of ancient horned dragon silhouettes, was still increasing. It was as though there was no end to it. 4,000 heads. 5,000, 6,000 heads. In the end, Duan Lingtian was so shocked that he was numb. He was dumbstruck as he stared at the over 7,000 ancient horned dragon silhouettes that were no longer increasing. Feng Tianwu, who was standing next to Duan Lingtian, had a completely different expression on her face. A martial monarch powerhouse? In Feng Tianwu's opinion, a person who could mobilize the heaven and earth energy and gather such a heaven and earth phenomenon could only be a powerhouse at the martial monarch stage or above. Even a peak void powerhouse who had comprehended 5 types of 9th-level void transformation concepts would not be able to trigger such an exaggerated heaven and earth phenomenon without using his spirit weapon. Those who could be called a peak void powerhouse were all 9th-level void transformation martial artists who had comprehended more than 2 types of 9th-level void transformation concepts. A 9th-level void transformation martial artist's full strength was equivalent to the strength of 1,200 ancient horned dragons. A 9th-level void transformation concept was equivalent to the strength of 1,000 ancient horned dragons. Therefore, a peak void powerhouse who had comprehended 5 types of 9th-level void transformation concepts would only have the strength of 6,200 ancient horned dragon silhouettes when he unleashed his full strength without using his spirit weapon. Such strength was not even worth mentioning when compared to the old man before him. This Zhao Ming. What did he go through? How could he possess such a powerful strength? After being extremely shocked, Duan Lingtian completely regained his senses. His eyes were filled with shock when he looked at Zhao Ming again. He did not expect Zhao Ming's current strength to be so powerful. After a year, the strength that Zhao Ming possessed was already comparable to a martial monarch powerhouse. It was far from what he could compare to now, the strength of over 7,000 ancient horned dragons. What did that mean? Even if he used the quasi-royal grade spirit sword and unleashed his full strength, his strength would not even be half of Zhao Ming's strength. Zhao Ming could kill him with just a wave of his hand. Duan Lingtian, didn't you say that since you were able to cripple me back then, you can still kill me today? I'd like to see how you're going to kill me. The change in Duan Lingtian's expression had been observed by Zhao Ming from beginning to end. When he saw the ugly expression on Duan Lingtian's face, a sinister and complacent smile appeared on his face. Zhao Ming, it looks like you've had quite a fortuitous encounter. In just a short span of a year or so, you actually possess such formidable strength. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and said to Zhao Ming with a solemn expression, "What? Are you afraid?" Zhao Ming smiled, a sinister smile. This feeling of having everything in his hands made him feel as if the blood in his body was boiling. Scared? You? Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. You're still so stubborn even when you're at death's door. Today, I will return everything that you gave me last time to you in full detail. However, after I cripple your dantian and limbs, I will personally watch you struggle on your deathbed for 3 days and 3 nights before I kill you. Zhao Ming snorted coldly. His face was filled with coldness, and his eyes gleamed with a vicious gleam. If you cut the weeds without removing the roots, they'll grow again when the spring breeze blows. The fact that Duan Lingtian did not take his life back then, and allowed him to recover and possess such a powerful strength was undoubtedly a living example of this. Therefore, he would not repeat Duan Lingtian's mistake. However, until now, he still could not recall what he had experienced. In his memory, after Duan Lingtian crippled his dantian and limbs and left, he fainted. When he regained consciousness again, he found himself in a mountain range. Moreover, he possessed a strength that was equivalent to the strength of over 7,000 ancient horned dragons. His new strength was a few hundred times stronger than his previous strength. My current strength is comparable to a martial monarch stage powerhouse. Although Zhao Ming was only a member of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he still had a certain level of understanding towards martial monarch stage powerhouses. It was precisely because of this that he knew his current strength was comparable to a martial monarch stage powerhouse. After crippling my dantian and limbs, you'll personally watch me struggle for 3 days and 3 nights before killing me? Needless to say, Zhao Ming's extremely vicious words caused coldness to arise from the bottom of Duan Lingtian's heart. At this moment, it was just as Zhao Ming had said. He regretted not removing the roots that day. At that time, because he hated Zhao Ming to the extreme, he joined forces with the members of the Azure Forest Trisect to kill the 7-star sword sect's elder Xian and the former sect leader, Ling Hu Jin Hong, after Zhao Ming betrayed the 7-star sword sect. Therefore, he did not directly kill Zhao Ming. He wanted Zhao Ming to live a life worse than death for the rest of his life, so as to eliminate the hatred in his heart. Never had he imagined that after a year, not only had Zhao Ming's crippled dantian and limbs recovered, he even possessed such formidable strength. Could it be that there's still something that I haven't noticed within the inscription formation in the Darkstone Empire? Now Duan Lingtian only thought that Zhao Ming's fortuitous encounter was within the inscription formation. Otherwise, he couldn't think of what fortuitous encounter Zhao Ming could have. With Zhao Ming's state at that time, it was impossible for his fortuitous encounter to be outside the inscription formation, unless someone entered the inscription formation to save him and gave him such a fortuitous encounter. But if one wanted to help him repair his dantian, one would either need an immortal spirit herb or a healing medicinal pill at the level of the quasi-royal grade resurrection pill. Duan Lingtian felt that all of this was unrealistic. 10,000 years ago, even though the Samsara Emperor Wu leaked out some quasi-royal grade resurrection pills and royal grade resurrection pills, but they all flowed into the hands of a few formidable powers on Cloud Continent. After 10,000 years, I'm afraid they've been used up long ago. Even if they haven't been used up, it's impossible for them to appear in the Dark Han Dynasty, let alone the Darkstone Empire, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Moreover, even if someone really saved Zhao Ming, it's impossible for that person to bestow him with such terrifying strength. In just over a year's time, Zhao Ming transformed from a void initiation stage martial artist, whose strength was only comparable to a dozen ancient horned dragons, to a powerhouse who possessed the strength of over 7,000 ancient horned dragons, and was comparable to a martial monarch. Even Emperor Wu might not have such a method. One had to admit that Zhao Ming's improvement had shocked Duan Lingtian. No matter how he searched through the Samsara Emperor Wu's memories, he couldn't find any method that could allow a person to possess such powerful strength in such a short period of time. Moreover, Zhao Ming's strength was very strange. The black energy surrounding Zhao Ming's body doesn't seem to be origin energy nor concept. What energy is that? Duan Lingtian frowned as he looked at Zhao Ming. Soon after, Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as though he recalled something. The energy surrounding Zhao Ming's body seems to be similar to the energy that appeared on the Devil Seal tablet. At that time, before he was devilified by the Devil Seal tablet and killed the 6 elders of the Skywolf Fort in one fell swoop, the black energy that wasn't origin energy or concept had appeared on the Devil Seal tablet. That black energy fused into his body and soul, causing him to lose consciousness, but at the same time, it also gave him extremely powerful strength. At that time, he was only a void interpretation stage martial artist. However, after he was devilified by the Devil Seal tablet, he managed to kill 6 void transformation stage elders of the Skywolf Fort. Could it be that Zhao Ming was devilified as well? Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed again as he guessed inwardly. However, since he was devilified, why didn't he lose his mind? Duan Lingtian could not figure this out no matter how hard he thought about it. Boom! At this moment, a wave of scorching aura surged towards him, causing Duan Lingtian's expression to change instantly. When he turned his head around, he immediately saw a vast flame rising from Feng Tianwu's body. It soared into the sky and emitted a scorching aura that covered the entire sky. Whoosh! Above Feng Tianwu's head, 1,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons first appeared before it turned into 2,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. Tianwu! Duan Lingtian's expression changed dramatically. He did not expect Feng Tianwu to communicate and cast the first-level Monarch stage Fire Profundity all of a sudden. At this moment he could clearly feel it. The fire spirit body's energy in Tianwu's body was about to explode. It was as though it was going to explode from Feng Tianwu's body. Whoosh! After the 2,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared, the heaven and earth phenomenon was still changing. Soon after, another 1,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared. The strength of 3,000 ancient horned dragons. Second-level Monarch stage Fire Profundity. Upon seeing this, Duan Lingtian's expression changed again. At this moment, he could feel the fire spirit body's energy in Feng Tianwu's body becoming even more restless. He did not have time to think. He hurriedly used his voice transmission to pierce into Feng Tianwu's ears. Tianwu, quickly retract your fire profundity. I have a way to deal with this Zhao Ming. Really, I have a way. Duan Lingtian's voice was filled with panic. In the past, he only knew that Feng Tianwu could cast the first-level Monarch stage Fire Profundity. He did not know that Feng Tianwu could cast the second-level Monarch stage Fire Profundity. Moreover, he had a feeling that if Tianwu continued, she might be able to cast the third, fourth, fifth, or sixth-level Monarch stage Fire Profundity. However, if Tianwu did that, she would definitely die. In fact, before she could even unleash the Monarch stage Fire Profundity, The energy that originated from the fire spirit body in her body would have already caused her to explode. After Feng Tianwu witnessed the strength that Zhao Ming had displayed and heard the irreconcilable hatred between Zhao Ming and Duan Lingtian from their conversation, she had a plan in her heart. Even if she had to risk her life, she would still kill Zhao Ming and save her elder brother Duan from danger. She would do anything, including her life, for her elder brother Duan. Really? Chapter 10:16. She thought Duan Lingtian only said that to comfort her. It's true. Duan Lingtian nodded immediately. He did not dare to hesitate. He knew. As long as he denied it, this silly girl would definitely disregard her own life and raise the level of the fire profundity she cast to fight Zhao Ming with all her might. After taking a serious look at Duan Lingtian, she could tell the Duan Lingtian did not seem to be lying to her. The flames that rose from Feng Tianwu's body gradually disappeared into the air. At the same time, Feng Tianwu's beautiful face turned pale. Barf! Subsequently, the energy that originated from the fire spirit body in her body began to stir, causing her internal organs to tremble. She felt a sweetness in her throat, and she immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Silly girl! Upon seeing this, Duan Lingtian's heart ached for no reason, and his eyes were filled with tenderness. Humph! I thought you had some tricks up your sleeve. I didn't expect you to turn pale and spit out blood after merely casting the strength of 3,000 ancient horned dragons. Zhao Ming, who had a solemn expression when he saw Feng Tianwu drawing the heaven and earth energy to form the heaven and earth phenomenon, could not help but snort coldly when he saw this scene. A mocking smile crept up on his face. He could see it. The reason Feng Tianwu was able to cast such a powerful force must be because she had cast a secret technique that risked her life. Otherwise, she would not have been injured by his own strength. Since you're willing to risk your life for this Duan Lingtian, I presume you must be in love with him. Since that's the case, I'll fulfill your wish today and let you and him be a pair of dying ducks. Zhao Ming spoke slowly. His words were filled with cold killing intent. As soon as his words left his mouth, the wisps of black mist around his body began to move abruptly, emitting a terrifying aura. Boom! 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 The movement of the black mist caused the airflow in the air to be compressed, setting off a series of thunderous air explosions. At the same time, a gust of black energy appeared out of thin air in Zhao Ming's hand. It completely condensed together and emitted a terrifying aura as though it could destroy everything. Then he looked at Feng Tianwu. His eyes filled with killing intent. As soon as Zhao Ming's voice fell, Duan Lingtian's face had already turned grave. A talisman silently appeared in his hand. It was one of the 3 talismans that cheapskate father of his had left him. He'd used one of the 3 talismans when he killed the number 1 expert of the Dark Han Dynasty's imperial family, Bai Nanxiang, and he still had 2 left. Bai Nanxiang was a first-level void transformation stage martial artist, and after he utilized the talisman, killing him would only take an instant. I wonder if this talisman can kill Zhao Ming. After all, Zhao Ming's current strength is comparable to a martial monarch powerhouse. If the talisman doesn't work, I'll have to use the Devil Seal tablet to devilize it. Duan Lingtian secretly sucked in a breath of cold air and had a plan in mind. However, the current him seemed to have forgotten one thing, which was also the most important thing. At that time, the reason he was devilized by the Devil Seal tablet was because the Devil Seal tablet took the initiative to contact him. If the Devil Seal tablet didn't take the initiative to contact him, he would be utterly unable to make the Devil Seal tablet devilize him. Instantly, Duan Lingtian's gaze locked firmly onto Zhao Ming. Right when Zhao Ming's clothes fluttered and he was about to make a move to kill Feng Tianwu, Duan Lingtian suddenly shouted out explosively, and it shocked Zhao Ming to the point his figure that was just about to flash out stopped. Appear! Duan Lingtian's shout shocked Zhao Ming. At the instant Zhao Ming reacted, he looked at Duan Lingtian and just happened to see a piece of paper floating lightly towards him, and it emitted a terrifying force that caused his heart to palpitate. Stop! At practically the instant Duan Lingtian threw out the talisman in his hand and shouted out appear. An explosive shout like a thunderclap descended from the sky. Accompanying this explosive shout was a figure that was like a ghost that appeared out of thin air by Zhao Ming's side. Unfortunately, he was too late. When he appeared, there was already a hideous bloody hole in between Zhao Ming's brows. An arrow of blood spurted out from the bloody hole, causing Zhao Ming's gaze to become unfocused, and he fell to the ground. At the instant Zhao Ming reacted, he did not even have time to think before he was killed by the condensed energy that shot out from the talisman that had already turned into powder. Zhao Ming's body fell from the sky and disappeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes in just a blink of an eye. Feng Tianwu's beautiful face was filled with shock, and her pair of beautiful eyes shone with an incredulous gleam. The scene she saw earlier was definitely the most unbelievable scene she had ever seen in her life. She saw it. Her elder brother Duan had only thrown out a piece of paper that was filled with scribbles and shouted, "Appear." In the next moment, the piece of paper shattered strangely and turned into powder that filled the sky. At the same time, Zhao Ming, who could unleash the strength of over 7,000 ancient horned dragons without using any spirit weapon, and whose strength was comparable to a martial monarch powerhouse, had a bloody hole in between his brows. He was killed in just a blink of an eye. As for how Zhao Ming died, although she did not see it clearly, she knew it had something to do with the piece of paper that had turned into powder that filled the sky with scribbles. "What's that?" Feng Tianwu was shocked. She had no idea what the piece of paper that Duan Lingtian had thrown out was. It actually possessed such a powerful energy. Soon after, Feng Tianwu's attention shifted to the black figure that appeared out of thin air. The thunderous roar just now was made by this person. Whoosh! When Duan Lingtian saw that the talisman left behind by his cheapskate father had killed Zhao Ming in just a second, he heaved a sigh of relief as though a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. However, his face quickly turned solemn again. Another talisman appeared in his hand. At the same time, he stared intently at the black-clad middle-aged man who had appeared out of thin air before him. Earlier, when he threw the talisman at Zhao Ming and shouted, "Activate!" the other party had stopped him and descended from the sky. It was clear that he did not come with good intentions. Moreover, the other party might even know Zhao Ming. Coupled with the other party's elusive speed, he realized that the other party's strength was not any weaker than Zhao Ming. Therefore, he hurriedly took out the remaining talisman. Duan Lingtian noticed that when the talisman appeared in his hand again, the black-clad middle-aged man who was staring at him coldly suddenly tensed up. When Duan Lingtian saw this, he could not help but heave a sigh of relief again. He could see that the black-clad middle-aged man was afraid of the talisman in his hand. It made sense when he thought about it. The scene of him throwing out the talisman and killing Zhao Ming in just a blink of an eye was witnessed by the other party. It would be strange if the other party was not afraid after seeing the talisman in his hand. "Dao talisman. You're just a mortal stage martial cultivator from a remote continent. Where did you get a Dao talisman from?" The black-clad middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance looked at Duan Lingtian and asked in a low voice, "A remote continent? A mortal stage martial cultivator?" Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned when he heard the black-clothed middle-aged man's words. Even Feng Tianwu, who stood by his side, had a face that could be said to be devastatingly beautiful as well. Since when did the Cloud Continent become a remote continent? Based on the black-clad middle-aged man's tone, he seemed to not be from Cloud Continent. Besides that, what was a mortal stage martial cultivator? "You're not from Cloud Continent?" Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as he asked with a serious expression. After fusing with the memories of reincarnation Emperor Wu, he knew very well that outside Cloud Continent, in the depths of the sea, there was a group of powerful demons. There were even demon emperors that reincarnation Emperor Wu could not match when he was at his prime. According to reincarnation Emperor Wu's guess, besides many powerful demon emperors, there might even be some Emperor Wu with shocking strength in the depths of the sea. Unfortunately, even with reincarnation Emperor Wu's strength that could be said to be number one on Cloud Continent all those years ago, he had to take every step carefully in the depths of the sea, and it was difficult for him to explore the secrets in the depths of the sea. In reincarnation Emperor Wu's memories, he even heard that many Emperor Wu experts of the older generation on Cloud Continent had once entered the depths of the sea to explore the secrets in the depths of the sea. However, after those Emperor Wu experts of the older generation left, none of them returned. According to the guesses of the people on Cloud Continent, It's very likely that those Emperor Wu experts of the older generation were lost in the depths of the sea, and were unable to find their way back. According to Reincarnation Emperor Wu's guesses, those Emperor Wu experts of the older generation either died in the hands of those powerful demon emperors in the depths of the sea, or they settled down in the depths of the sea or even overseas. According to Reincarnation Emperor Wu's guesses, in this world besides Cloud Continent, it's very likely that there are other continents. The other continents should be at the other end of the depths of the sea. Duan Lingtian easily found out about this when he searched through Reincarnation Emperor Wu's memories. Reincarnation Emperor Wu had once seen a paragraph of text records in an ancient ruin. It was a record left behind by an ancient martial artist. The text clearly stated that he'd once encountered a powerhouse that came from outside Cloud Continent. That powerhouse only used a single move to defeat him, whereas the martial artist that left behind that paragraph of text called himself an existence at the 6th level of the Emperor Wu stage. Even when Reincarnation Emperor Wu was at his prime, he was only at the 4th level of the Emperor Wu stage. Besides that, during the era of Reincarnation Emperor Wu, he was the only Emperor Wu on Cloud Continent that was at the 4th level of the Emperor Wu stage or above. So, he was the well-deserved number 1 Emperor Wu on Cloud Continent at that time. Duan Lingtian was able to find out all of this from Reincarnation Emperor Wu's memories. Defeated an expert at the 6th level of the Emperor Wu stage with a single move? An expert at the 6th level of the Emperor Wu stage, even if Reincarnation Emperor Wu was at his prime, he would still be defeated with a single move. An existence that's able to defeat an expert at the 6th level of the Emperor Wu stage with a single move. How terrifying would that be? When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian felt a wave of fear. I'm naturally not from this remote continent of yours. The black-clothed middle-aged man couldn't help but snort coldly when he heard Duan Lingtian's question. Chapter 10:17. Then where are you from? Duan Lingtian asked again. The black-clad middle-aged man's fearful gaze when he looked at the talisman in his hand was caught by Duan Lingtian. The talisman in his hand was given to him by his cheapskate father. However, he did not expect that even this powerhouse who was suspected to be from outside the Cloud Continent would be fearful of the talisman in his hand. Where am I from? The black-clad middle-aged man took a deep breath and looked at Duan Lingtian angrily. Are you kidding me? Since you have the Dao talisman drawn by a Saint Rudiment stage Dao cultivator, how can you not know where I'm from? This time, I won't pursue the matter of you destroying my human puppet for the sake of the Saint Rudiment stage Dao cultivator behind you. Otherwise, even if you have the Dao talisman he left for you, I'll still kill you even if I'm severely injured. The black-clad middle-aged man shouted coldly. Based on his words, he was saying that the talisman in Duan Lingtian's hand could severely injure him. The moment the black-clad middle-aged man's words left his mouth, he disappeared before Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu's eyes. It was as though he was never there. Duan Lingtian could not help but smile wryly when he saw the black-clad middle-aged man coming and going without a trace. I still have many things to ask him. Why did he leave so quickly? Whether it was the mortal stage martial cultivator or the Saint Rudiment stage Dao cultivator mentioned by the black-clad middle-aged man, they were extremely unfamiliar to Duan Lingtian. Even if he searched the Reincarnation Emperor Wu's memories of his 2 lifetimes, he could not find any related records. Mortal stage martial cultivator, Saint Rudiment stage Dao cultivator. Even the Reincarnation Emperor Wu has never heard of it in his 2 lifetimes. It was precisely because of this that Duan Lingtian was surprised. Could it be that the mortal stage martial cultivator and Saint Rudiment stage Dao cultivator are cultivation realms from the depths of the ocean or even another continent overseas? Just like our Cloud Continent's Void stage, Martial Monarch stage and Emperor Wu stage? Soon Duan Lingtian, who had regained his senses, couldn't help but guess. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became. Besides that, the black-clothed middle-aged man even said that the talisman in my hand was a Dao talisman? Moreover, it's a Dao talisman drawn by a Saint Rudiment stage cultivator. Thinking of this, Duan Lingtian could not help but ponder. The talisman in his hand, or more accurately, the Dao talisman, was given to him by his cheapskate father, Duan Rufeng before he left. "Father, why would you have a Dao talisman? Could it be that he—" For a moment, a crazy idea appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind. That cheapskate father of his had most likely not been on Cloud Continent during the 20 years he had been away. Otherwise, where would he get the Dao talisman from? A Dao talisman was obviously not something from Cloud Continent. Could it be that father brought mother, Jingru, and the others away from Cloud Continent and brought them to another continent overseas? The moment he thought of this, the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth could not help but twitch violently. No wonder there's no record of this talisman even in the memories of the reincarnation Emperor Wu's 2 lifetimes. As it turns out, this is not something from Cloud Continent at all. Unknowingly, Duan Lingtian's gaze landed on the Dao talisman in his hand, and a faint wry smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. In the past, in his opinion, as long as he stood at the peak of Cloud Continent, he would be able to look down on the world and look down on the common people. However, it seemed like even if he really stood at the peak of Cloud Continent like the reincarnation Emperor Wu did in the past, there were still many people who were more powerful than him in the depths of the sea or even the other continent overseas. Looks like the older generation of Emperor Wu powerhouses on Cloud Continent might really have gone to the other continent overseas just as the reincarnation Emperor Wu had guessed. That place has mortal stage martial cultivators, Saint Rudiment stage Dao cultivators, and even Dao talismans. Duan Lingtian thought to himself, if father really brought mother, Jingru, and the others away from Cloud Continent and went to the other continent overseas, his current strength is far from what an ordinary Emperor Wu can compare to. After taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself with a solemn expression, "Now I'm almost certain. When Peak Master Qin Xiang and I faced Zhao Ming and the other Azure Forest Trisex Guardian Elders in the sky above the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Imperial City, I'm almost certain that the voice that was deliberately lowered and hoarse was Father's voice. Father is that mysterious powerhouse hidden in the Crimson Sky Kingdom." Although Duan Lingtian had guessed this in the past, he did not dare to be 100% certain. Now, he could be 100% certain. That mysterious powerhouse was his deadbeat father, an existence that could easily suppress the 3 6th level Void Initiation stage martial artists in the sky above the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Imperial City. Even the current him was unable to do such a thing. Father's strength might be even stronger than the reincarnation Emperor Wu when he was at his prime. I really don't know what exactly he experienced during the 20 years he left to actually allow him to possess such a terrifying strength. Compared to father, the fortuitous encounters I encountered all along the way like fusing with the memories of 2 lifetimes of the reincarnation Emperor Wu, and the various fortuitous encounters after that are not worth mentioning. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian laughed in self-ridicule. However, if father is really an expert from the other continent overseas, why didn't he bring me along when he left with mother, Jingru Baiyao and Xiaolan? Duan Lingtian was puzzled by this. No matter what, he was the son of his deadbeat father. Logically speaking, his deadbeat father should not have allowed him to stay on Cloud Continent and fend for himself like this. Perhaps there's another reason why father didn't bring me along. Now Duan Lingtian could only think in this way. After all, there was no parent that did not wish for their children to stay by their side. At the same time, Duan Lingtian's thoughts flashed as he seemed to have thought of something. With a raise of his hand, he withdrew a jade box, and it was precisely the exquisite jade box that his deadbeat father, Duan Rufeng, had left him. As he looked at the exquisite jade box in his hand, Duan Lingtian's mind once again resounded with the message his father had left him in the voice transmission jade slip. Besides those 3 talismans, I've left you an exquisite jade box. Once you have the ability to open it in the future, you'll know where your mother and I are. These were the original words of his deadbeat father, Duan Rufeng. Currently, even if I don't use the quasi-royal grade spirit sword, my strength is equivalent to the strength of over 2,000 ancient horned dragons. I should be able to open this exquisite jade box now, right? Duan Lingtian's heart jolted as he placed both of his hands on the jade box. Origin energy rose as the 4 types of concepts followed him like shadows. In the next moment, the heaven and earth energy above Duan Lingtian's head swirled and finally gathered into 2,200 lifelike ancient horned dragons, silhouettes that wriggled down. Originally, Feng Tianwu found it strange when she heard Duan Lingtian muttering words that she did not understand from time to time. However, although she found it strange, she was sensible enough not to disturb Duan Lingtian. Now, when she saw the heaven and earth phenomenon that appeared above Duan Lingtian's head, her beautiful face could not help but change slightly. She did not expect this at all. Her elder brother Duan actually possessed such a powerful strength today. Back then, in the Emperor Wu's secret treasure, outside Qingfeng Palace, elder brother Duan fought with Lei Zhong, the strongest person among the younger generation in Izumo sect. With the help of his spirit weapon, his strength was only equivalent to the strength of 1,600 ancient horned dragons when he unleashed his full strength. However, now, without the help of his spirit weapon, elder brother Duan only used his origin energy and concept to display a strength that's equivalent to the strength of 2,200 ancient horned dragons. Feng Tianwu secretly gasped. For a moment, she could not help but be shocked by the strength that Duan Lingtian displayed. Now she finally understood. Why did her elder brother Duan have the confidence to protect her and Zhang Shouyong during the journey back to the Dark Han dynasty from the northern desert? As it turned out, elder brother Duan already possessed such a powerful strength. It seems like elder brother Duan's fortuitous encounter in Qingfeng Palace is extraordinary. Feng Tianwu thought to herself. Ever since she left Emperor Wu's secret treasure, she had never left Duan Lingtian. Therefore, in her opinion, the reason why her elder brother Duan's strength had improved so much must be because he had encountered some enviable fortuitous encounter in Emperor Wu's secret treasure. I still can't open it. Soon after, Feng Tianwu heard Duan Lingtian sigh. She realized that Duan Lingtian had used the strength of 2,200 ancient horned dragons just to open the exquisite jade box in his hand. However, based on her elder brother Duan's words, he still could not open the jade box even after using the strength of 2,200 ancient horned dragons? What jade box is that? Even the strength of 2,200 ancient horned dragons can't open it? For a moment, Feng Tianwu's beautiful face changed slightly. Before she could react, she noticed that a sword had appeared in Duan Lingtian's hand with a raise of his hand. It was a sword that emitted a terrifying aura. It was Duan Lingtian's quasi-royal grade spirit sword. As soon as the quasi-royal grade spirit sword appeared, another 800 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared in the sky again. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's hand shook, and the sword that contained the strength of 3,000 ancient horned dragons pierced toward the crack on the exquisite jade box at lightning speed. He intended to pry it open by force. Clang! However, as a soft sound resonated, the exquisite jade box did not move at all. There wasn't even the slightest trace of a mark on the crack at the closing point. What's this exquisite jade box made of? It's actually so hard. In the end, Duan Lingtian could only give up. As he put away the quasi-royal grade spirit sword, he sighed again. He realized that it was still difficult for him to open the exquisite jade box with his current strength. Father is really getting more and more mysterious. After returning to his senses, Duan Lingtian could not help but smile wryly. At the same time, he put the exquisite jade box away. Elder brother Duan, what jade box is that? Not only did your sword that contained the strength of 3,000 ancient horned dragons not open it, it didn't even leave a single trace on it. Chapter 10:18. I don't know either. Duan Lingtian smiled wryly as he shook his head. Even though that exquisite jade box was left behind for him by that cheapskate father of his, he knew nothing about its background, let alone what was inside it. Of course, there was one thing he could confirm. His cheapskate father must have left behind a voice transmission jade slip inside, and the message inside should be able to tell him about the other continent outside the ocean. Of course, other than the voice transmission jade slip, there must be something else inside the exquisite jade box. Duan Lingtian had an extremely strong intuition about this. Perhaps, I'll have to wait until my cultivation base breaks through to the martial monarch stage before I can open it. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Tongwu, let's go. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian called out to Feng Tianwu and continued their journey to Xiongquan's hometown. He was prepared to look for Xiongquan and help him repair his dantian. Okay, Feng Tianwu nodded obediently and followed Duan Lingtian silently like a shadow. Duan Lingtian quickly found Xiongquan's hometown based on his memory of sending him back. It was a remote little village located in the mountains. Although the little village was remote, it was full of life. When Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu arrived here, they could vaguely see the scene of men plowing and women weaving in the village. There were also children playing happily in the village without any worries. If I can stay in a place like this with the person I like for the rest of my life would not be in vain. Feng Tianwu looked down at the scene in the village. Her autumn eyes that seemed to be able to melt everything were as gentle as water. Her red lips parted slightly as she muttered involuntarily. It's normal for you to think like this. However, if it were them, they would most likely wish to have a strong martial strength to explore the outside world and have a good look at the outside world. Duan Lingtian smiled faintly as he spoke. Naturally, one would have different thoughts when standing in a different position. For example, Feng Tianwu, who grew up with a golden spoon in her mouth, was a veritable proud daughter of heaven. It was not strange for her to be moved by such a peaceful scene. However, if it were the villagers in the village, they would rather be like Feng Tianwu, who had extraordinary martial arts and could go outside to have a look. Because they were too weak and did not have the ability to protect themselves, they did not dare to leave the village easily. Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Feng Tianwu realized that her muttering had been heard by Duan Lingtian. For a moment, her beautiful face couldn't help but blush, as if blood could drip out of it. Feng Tianwu's slightly bashful and lovely appearance caused Duan Lingtian, who happened to be looking at her, to become absent-minded. He couldn't help but have the desire to move forward and fiercely kiss the face of the beauty in front of him. You may leave. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and suppressed his somewhat restless emotions. After greeting Feng Tianwu, he took the lead to descend from the sky. Originally, Feng Tianwu was secretly delighted when she saw Duan Lingtian's fiery gaze. However, now that she saw Duan Lingtian descending to the village as if he was escaping, she could not help but sigh again. What a block of wood! Glancing at the tall purple figure with some anger, Feng Tianwu moved her body, and as if she had transformed into a fire elf, she followed him like a shadow. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian's body swept like the wind and descended from the sky like a goshawk. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at a low altitude of the village and appeared in front of the villagers in the village. Wow! He can actually fly. The first to notice Duan Lingtian was a 4 or 5-year-old boy. He looked at Duan Lingtian, who was standing in the air, and shouted excitedly. It was as if he'd discovered a new continent. I heard my father say that only an expert at the void-prying stage or above is able to fly and stand in the air. Looks like he's an expert at the void-prying stage or above. A young girl that looked to be 13 or 14 said. An expert at the void-prying stage or above. Then wouldn't he be as formidable as Uncle Xiongquan? Another 7 or 8-year-old boy exclaimed in surprise. Unlike the naivety of the group of children, the expressions of the group of adult villagers that noticed Duan Lingtian had changed, and their eyes were filled with terror. They looked at Duan Lingtian with a gaze as if they'd seen a scourge or a ferocious beast. Their thoughts were very simple. Logically speaking, it was impossible for an expert like this to descend to their village. However, now that he'd descended to their village, it was most probably not a good thing. In next to no time, a villager's eyes flashed as he hastily turned around and left, as if he was going to send a message. After a short moment, the eyes of the remaining group of adult villagers flashed as they noticed that a red-clothed young woman had appeared out of thin air beside the violet-clothed young man that stood in the air. The red-clothed young woman had a graceful figure and a drop-dead gorgeous appearance, causing them to be dumbstruck for a moment. So beautiful! Is this Big Sister Fairy? Big Sister Fairy has descended to the mortal world. It wasn't only the group of adult villagers that were attracted by the red-clothed young woman. Even the children that were originally playing in the village had stopped what they were doing and stared fixedly at the red-clothed young woman in the air. The adult villagers were the same as well, and their gazes were completely attracted by the red-clothed young woman before them. They'd stayed in this remote little village all their lives and were self-sufficient, and they'd never gone outside. When had they ever seen such a beauty? Tianwu, these children are calling you Big Sister Fairy. Duan Lingtian looked at the group of naive children before him and lightly smiled as he spoke to Feng Tianwu. The rosy color on Feng Tianwu's beautiful face deepened when she heard this. Who are you people? At this moment, a loud shout resonated from the back of the village. Accompanying this shout was an agile figure that was as agile as a cheetah. In just a blink of an eye, it swept into the village and stared at Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu covetously. The person that appeared in front of Duan Lingtian was a tall and sturdy young man who was about 20 years old. The young man had a pair of thick eyebrows. Although his eyes under his eyebrows were filled with dread when he looked at them, he still straightened his back and did not take a step back. At this moment, Duan Lingtian could not help but have a hint of admiration in his eyes. This young man seems a little familiar. Soon after, Duan Lingtian, who had carefully sized up the tall and sturdy young man for a while, suddenly realized that he seemed a little familiar, as though he'd seen him somewhere before. This is Xiongquan's hometown. I've only been here when I sent Xiongquan back. This young man is about 20 years old now. He should have only been 12 or 13 years old back then. At this thought, Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. He looked at the tall and sturdy young man and asked with some surprise, Could it be that you're heir Hu? As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, not only was the tall and sturdy young man stunned, but the young man was also stunned. Even the group of adult villagers in the village was stunned. This brother who came with fairy sister seems to know brother heir Hu. Brother heir Hu is so amazing. Even this brother who can fly knows him. Brother heir Hu is indeed the only person in our village who left the village with Uncle Xiongquan to explore the outside world. The group of children in the village had exaggerated expressions on their faces. You know me? The tall and sturdy young man, who was heir Hu, stared blankly at Duan Lingtian, his face full of confusion. What? Heir Hu, you've even forgotten me? Duan Lingtian smiled. I remember that when Xiongquan and I came to the village that year, you were only 12 or 13 years old. At that time you even invited me to your house for a meal. As soon as Duan Lingtian said this, heir Hu's pupils couldn't help but constrict. When he was 12 or 13 years old, he invited this person before him to his house for a meal. Your brother Lingtian? Finally, heir Hu searched through the distant memories of his childhood, and finally remembered Duan Lingtian. His face couldn't help but reveal an excited and emotional expression. All these years, he had heard his uncle Xiongquan mention the various deeds of this purple-clothed young man before him. The purple-clothed young man was already at the 8th level of the origin core stage when he was his current age. All this while, he had regarded Duan Lingtian as his idol. Now that he saw his idol again, how could he not be excited? He's young Master Lingtian? Meanwhile, many villagers couldn't help but recall the distinguished guest that came to their village all those years ago when they heard what heir Hu said. Even the #1 expert in their village, Xiongquan, had to respectfully address that guest as young master. It's really young Master Lingtian. After so many years, young Master Lingtian hasn't changed in the slightest. Yeah, young Master Lingtian is still so young. All the villagers looked at Duan Lingtian, and the fear in their eyes had vanished and was replaced with respect. Heir Hu, where's Xiongquan? Duan Lingtian sighed with emotion as he looked at the robust young man before him. In the blink of an eye, the child from all those years ago had already grown up, and he even possessed a cultivation at the 4th level of the origin core stage. Although his cultivation wasn't comparable to his age from all those years ago, but in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he could be considered to possess extraordinary natural talent. Uncle Xiongquan, heir Hu was just about to speak when he was interrupted by a loud and clear voice. Who's there? You dare trespass into our Xiong village? The loud and clear voice was like a clap of thunder as it resonated from afar. The moment the voice left his mouth, a figure that seemed to have transformed into a gigantic sword shot into the village and appeared next to heir Hu. At the same time, 200 ancient horned dragon silhouettes came to a halt in the sky above the person who had a layer of solidified sword energy flashing on his body. They wriggled down in an imposing manner. First level advanced sword concept? Before the person transformed into a gigantic sword and shot into the village, Duan Lingtian had already seen the 200 ancient horned dragons' silhouettes that followed after him. His eyes narrowed uncontrollably. Now that the person had revealed himself, he couldn't help but exclaim in shock, Xiongquan, when did you comprehend the first-level advanced sword concept? The person was a tall and robust middle-aged man. His face was covered in stubble, and he didn't care about his appearance. Was he not Xiongquan who had always been by his side all those years ago? Young master. Chapter 1019. As the sword energy surrounding Xiongquan's body disappeared, the 200 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons above his head disappeared as well. His pair of eyes that were as big as copper gongs were filled with inexplicable excitement and tears of joy. After so many years, Xiongquan completely lost his composure when he saw Duan Lingtian again. Haha! Xiongquan! Long time no see. Duan Lingtian flew down and landed in front of Xiongquan. He looked at Xiongquan from top to bottom and smiled. You're still the same as before. You haven't changed at all. Although Duan Lingtian tried his best to remain calm, he could not help but feel excited. At this moment, he seemed to have completely forgotten that Xiongquan had comprehended the first-level advanced sword concept. Young master. Seeing Duan Lingtian was so close to him, Xiongquan's body trembled even more intensely due to his excitement. He could no longer hold back the tears in his eyes as they flowed down. As the saying went, a man did not cry. Men don't cry easily, but that's only because they haven't been deeply hurt. When he was not happy. However, Xiongquan was not sad. Instead, he was happy. He was so excited that tears of joy were flowing down his cheeks. Xiongquan, sorry to keep you waiting. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and said, I told you that year. The next time I come to look for you, it'll be the time I repair your dantian. This was Duan Lingtian's promise to Xiongquan back then. Now he was here to fulfill his promise. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Xiongquan was stunned. He was completely stunned. Repair my dantian? Young master, why are telling the truth? Xiongquan's emotions that had calmed down were stirred up again. His stubbled cheeks trembled violently due to his excitement. Although he had never shown the sadness of being unable to cultivate due to his dantian being destroyed in front of others, he would always be in a daze in the middle of the night. He would be in a daze because of his destroyed dantian. As for the promise Duan Lingtian made to him back then, he did not take it to heart. He only thought Duan Lingtian was just comforting him. This was because he had never heard of anyone being able to repair their dantian after it was destroyed. But today Duan Lingtian, whom he had not seen for many years, had appeared before him again, and even said that he could repair his dantian. At this moment, he had no choice but to believe the promise Duan Lingtian had made to him back then. What? You still don't believe me? Duan Lingtian smiled. No. Young master, I just feel that this is too inconceivable. Xiongquan hurriedly shook his head and said, Big brother Lingtian, can you really help Uncle Xiongquan repair his dantian? Who was beside Xiongquan, looked at Duan Lingtian excitedly. For a moment, the other villagers also looked at Duan Lingtian expectantly, as if they wanted to get a definite answer from Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian did not say anything. He knew that at this moment, no matter how much he said, it would be useless. He might as well let the facts prove everything. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian raised his hand and took out the immortal spirit herb from his storage ring. The last leaf of the immortal spirit herb that was shining with a green light appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Xiongquan, eat this. After Duan Lingtian plucked the last leaf of the immortal spirit herb, the green light surrounding the immortal spirit herb completely disappeared and disappeared without a trace. However, the green light on the immortal spirit herb's leaf continued to shine. A grass that glows? What kind of grass is this? It's so magical. Immediately, the surrounding villagers of Xiong village were shocked. Even the children who had quietened down were stunned. When Xiongquan saw the immortal spirit herb shining with a green light, he knew that this stalk of glowing grass was not simple. Now, when he heard that Duan Lingtian wanted him to eat the immortal spirit herb, his heart could not help but tremble. This was the herb that could help him repair his dantian? If it was a normal herb, even if Duan Tian wanted him to eat it, he would more or less have some doubts in his heart even if he did not say anything on the surface. However, the herb that was shining with a green light in front of him made him realize that it was not an ordinary herb. What kind of joke was this? A normal herb that could shine? Thank you, young master. Xiong Quan excitedly took the immortal spirit herb from Duan Tian's hand and stuffed it into his mouth without any hesitation, swallowing it in 2 to 3 mouthfuls. Xiong Quan swallowed the herb. Not only the villagers of Xiong village, even Feng Tianwu, who had landed and was standing beside Duan Tian, looked at Xiong Quan with a curious expression. Although she knew about the medicinal power of the immortal spirit herb from Duan Tian, she had never seen the power of the immortal spirit herb with her own eyes. Now she finally had the chance to see the immortal spirit herb display its medicinal power with her own eyes. She was looking forward to it. After Xiong Quan ate the immortal spirit herb, the villagers of Xiong village held their breaths and their gazes fell on Xiong Quan. Uncle Xiong Quan, who clenched his fists tightly and his body trembled slightly as he looked at Xiong Quan with eyes full of expectation. In the past, he was the closest to Xiong Quan in Xiong village. His skills were all taught to him by Xiong Quan. Because of this, he knew how much his uncle Xiong Quan cared about his destroyed dantian. Because of this, he especially hoped that his uncle Xiong Quan's dantian could be repaired. Wow! Uncle Xiong Quan's stomach is glowing. A little boy exclaimed. At the same time, everyone saw that in Xiong Quan's dantian, there was now a dazzling green light that appeared through his robes. The green light became more and more intense. Half an hour later, the green light gradually became smaller and smaller until it was completely extinguished and disappeared. Uncle Xiong Quan, who took a deep breath and looked at Xiong Quan with a worried expression. Feng Tianwu and the villagers of the Xiong family village were all staring at Xiong Quan. Their eyes were filled with urgency. They wanted to know the result. As for Duan Tian, he had a calm expression from beginning to end. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, his expression would not change. It was as if he was not worried that Xiong Quan's dantian could not be repaired. Ha ha ha. Under everyone's gaze, Xiong Quan was stunned for a moment. The moment he came back to his senses, a smile appeared on his stubbled face, and then he threw his head back and laughed heartily. His laughter was wanton, as if he wanted to completely disperse the sullenness of all these years. It's repaired. Young master, you'll understand everything when you follow me to that place. Xiong Quan, who was leading the way in front, told Duan Tian. Duan Tian nodded and did not say anything as he followed Xiong Quan closely. He wanted to see where Xiong Quan was leading him to. That place allowed Xiong Quan to comprehend the void transformation concept in just a few years. Chapter 1020. Xiong Quan took the lead and led the way. Duan Tian and Feng Tianwu followed him like shadows. The terrain in the mountain range was steep. It was difficult for an ordinary person to walk. Coupled with the wild beasts that would jump out from the side, it was enough to be a nightmare for an ordinary person. Naturally, Duan Tian and the other two were not ordinary people. Duan Tian and Feng Tianwu flew in the air without any pressure at all. Although Xiong Quan was flying on the ground, he seemed to be walking on flat ground as though he was taking a leisurely stroll. The sword energy that was emitting a sharp aura from his body caused the wild beasts to flee in all directions, let alone pounce on him to attack. Finally, Duan Tian and Feng Tianwu followed Xiong Quan to a canyon in the depths of the mountain range. The entrance of the canyon was the one-line sky. It was covered by a lush forest outside. If it was not for Xiong Quan leading the way, Duan Tian and Feng Tianwu would definitely not have discovered this hidden canyon. Young master, young lady Tianwu is inside. Xiong Quan's breathing quickened as he stood in front of the canyon's entrance. It was as though there was something inside that made him inexplicably excited. On the way here, Duan Tian had already introduced Feng Tianwu to Xiong Quan. Xiong Quan was a shrewd person. It was easy for him to see that Feng Tianwu was interested in his young master. After seeing his young master's attitude, He knew that young Lady Tianwu would very likely become the third young mistress in the future. Therefore, when he faced Feng Tianwu, he was very respectful and did not dare to neglect her. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded. He had also noticed Xiong Quan's excitement. This made him even more curious. What was inside the canyon could make Xiong Quan lose his composure. In his memory, Xiong Quan was a steady person. Let's go. As soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he took the lead and flew through the one-line sky and entered the canyon. Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan followed closely behind him. Whoosh! 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 As soon as he entered the canyon, Duan Lingtian heard the sound of rushing water coming from inside, which attracted him to look into the distance. With just a glance, he saw a huge waterfall in the depths of the canyon. The waterfall was like the Milky Way hanging down from the horizon. Looking from afar, it gave people a kind of visual shock. Young master, this is the place. Now, Xiong Quan's agitated emotions had finally calmed down a little. He once again took the lead and was the first to arrive at the opposite side of the waterfall. He stared straight at the mountain wall beside the waterfall. It was as if there was something on the mountain wall that attracted him. At the same time, the sword energy on Xiong Quan's body skyrocketed, as his attention was completely attracted by the mountain wall. It was filled with waves of fierce aura as it emitted an extremely sharp aura. Xiong Quan's strange movements immediately attracted the attention of Duan Lingtian and Feng Tianwu. At this time, Duan Lingtian had also come to Xiong Quan's side. Out of curiosity, they immediately followed Xiong Quan's gaze and looked at the mountain wall beside the waterfall in the distance. With just a glance, the two of them were completely attracted. Sword. On the mountain wall, a huge word sword appeared clearly before Duan Lingtian's eyes. At first glance, he did not feel anything. However, when he looked at it carefully, Duan Lingtian discovered that his mind was completely blank. The word sword on the mountain wall was obviously carved by someone using a sword ray. The strokes of the word were smooth, and it emitted waves of fierce sword intent. Soon, the only thing left in Duan Lingtian's blank mind was the word sword before his eyes. The strokes that were filled with fierce sword intent caused Duan Lingtian to feel as if he was possessed. Whoosh! Unknowingly, a sword energy rose around Duan Lingtian's body. It was the 9th level intermediate sword concept that he had comprehended. Almost at the same time when the sword concept appeared, the heaven and earth energy above Duan Lingtian's head stirred and finally gathered into 100 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. In the canyon, it was dead silent. It was not only Duan Lingtian and Xiong Quan who were staring blankly at the word sword on the mountain wall. Even Feng Tianwu's eyes were attracted by the word sword on the mountain wall. Originally, she only thought that the word sword was beautiful. However, after she took a closer look at it, she discovered that the word sword seemed to have some kind of magical power that caused her to be unable to move her eyes away. It was as though she was completely immersed in it. Unknowingly, she felt that she seemed to have touched a type of force and had successfully comprehended it. The characteristics of this force were obvious. It was fierce and sharp. Sword force. Feng Tianwu's heart skipped a beat, and her beautiful face changed slightly. She did not expect that the word sword on the mountain wall before her would allow her to comprehend a sword force that she had never come into contact with before. Although she was deeply shocked, her eyes were still fixed on the word sword on the mountain wall. The word sword seemed to have an endless magical power that caused her to be unwilling to move her eyes away. Whoosh! Next to her, the sword energy on Duan Lingtian's body skyrocketed. It emitted an even fiercer aura that shot into the sky. At the same time, the heaven and earth phenomenon above Duan Lingtian's head changed as well. In just a blink of an eye, it changed from 100 silhouettes of horned dragons to 200 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. First level advanced sword concept. Perhaps even Duan Lingtian, who was completely immersed in comprehending the word sword on the mountain wall, did not realize that his sword concept had broken through. He had broken through to the void transformation concept in one go. Sword, the king of all weapons. Sword, you can save people and you can also kill people. Sword, uphold justice in the world, and cut off all injustice in the world. Unknowingly, a calm voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears while his mind was completely immersed in the word sword on the mountain wall. The voice did not contain any emotions. When the voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears word by word, it gave him a whole new understanding of the word, sword. The person who left the voice behind had a comprehension of the word sword that made him feel embarrassed. For a moment, he felt that his attainment in the sword was like the difference between a firefly and the sun and moon when compared to the person. At the same time, Duan Lingtian realized that he seemed to have fallen into a strange state. In this state, his mind was completely clear. The word sword that came from the mountain wall and filled his mind began to undergo a myriad of changes. In the end, the word sword turned into a black shadow that appeared out of thin air with the sword in hand. Duan Lingtian could not see what the black shadow looked like at all. However, he could clearly sense the fierce sword intent that was emitted from the black shadow. It was a sword intent that seemed to be able to tear everything apart. The sword intent was so oppressive that it made it difficult for him to breathe. In front of the invisible sword intent that's being emitted from this black shadow, I'm afraid even the Emperor stage sword profundity can't compete with it. For some reason, this thought appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind. As soon as the thought appeared, it was difficult to suppress it. Soon after, the strange black shadow that appeared in his mind began to move. Duan Lingtian's mind was in turmoil all of a sudden. Heavens! How was this possible? He realized the black shadow's movements were as smooth as flowing water. It had actually performed a sword skill. It would be fine if it was some other sword skill. However, it was the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash that he had performed. The 9 Dragons Radiant Flash was a heaven-rank advanced sword skill that came with the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique. Logically speaking, other than him and the reincarnation Emperor Wu whose soul was destroyed, there should not be a third person in the world who knew how to perform this sword skill. Duan Lingtian did not have time to think. His mind was in turmoil again. He realized that when the mysterious black shadow in his mind performed the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash, all 9 dragons had appeared, and its aura was like a rainbow. The 9 pairs of eyes of the 9 divine dragons flashed and shot out 18 ultimate beams of light. Whoosh! 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 18 ultimate beams of light shot out in an unstoppable manner. It was as though they could pierce through everything. The perfection stage 9 Dragons Radiant Flash. Duan Lingtian was stunned. Subsequently, he saw the mysterious black shadow perform the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash again and again as though it did not know the meaning of exhaustion. At this moment, it was as though it had transformed into a tireless teacher. Duan Lingtian went from being shocked at the beginning to calmness at the end. Now, as he watched the mysterious black shadow perform the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash without blinking, he learned many things from it. Time passed by quietly. Duan Lingtian did not know how much time had passed. Just as he realized that he had a brand new and ultimate understanding of the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash, he realized that the mysterious black shadow had stopped moving. Just as he was about to come back to his senses and perform the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash to test the results of his understanding, whoosh! The mysterious black shadow moved again and performed another set of sword skills. This set of sword skills surprised Duan Lingtian again. 9 Tribulation Sword Control Technique. The mysterious black shadow stood in the air and 9 swords appeared around its body. The 9 swords floated around its body and moved continuously. All of a sudden, whoosh! 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 As the mysterious black shadow moved, the 9 swords shot out together with a murderous aura. However, this was not the only thing that surprised Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was shocked to see that 9 divine dragons emerged from the 9 swords. A total of 81 divine dragons appeared and their eyes flashed at the same time. In the next moment, 162 ultimate beams of light shot out and enveloped the entire area. It was extremely domineering. This works too. Just as Duan Lingtian was in a daze, the mysterious black shadow disappeared, causing him to come back to his senses. Only then did he realize that he was still standing on the opposite side of the canyon's waterfall. Tianwu. After he came back to his senses, Duan Lingtian noticed that Feng Tianwu was also staring at the word, sword on the mountain wall. He could not help but gasp. Who left that word sword behind? Just as Duan Lingtian was wondering about it, He seemed to have sensed something and suddenly lifted his head to look at the sky above his head. There, the heaven and earth phenomenon showed signs of dispersing when he was about to withdraw the sword concept that had risen from his body. This. Chapter 1021. Duanlingtian saw it. At this moment, there were 600 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons above his head. Just the sword concept alone is able to mobilize the heaven and earth energy and gather 600 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. 5th level advanced sword concept. In the beginning, Duanlingtian was mumbling to himself. However, in the end, his eyes narrowed uncontrollably as he exclaimed in shock. Duanlingtian did not expect this at all. He had only taken a glance at the word sword on the mountain wall earlier, and it had already caused such a huge change in his body. Not only did he have a new understanding of the 2 sets of heaven rank advanced sword skills, but even the 9th level intermediate sword concept that he had comprehended earlier had also transformed into the 5th level advanced sword concept. It had risen by 5 levels in one go. Even the profound assimilation formation is not as crazy as this, right? As Duanlingtian mumbled to himself, the corner of his mouth twitched a little. His gaze instinctively landed on the word sword on the mountain wall again. With just one glance, Duanlingtian felt his head sink, and his gaze became unfocused. Humph! Duanlingtian, who was already prepared, pinched his thigh with his hand that was placed on it. The intense pain caused his gaze to focus immediately, and he was completely awakened. After he regained his senses, Duanlingtian did not dare to look at the word sword anymore. Who's the person who carved this word? Even a powerhouse like Emperor Wu wouldn't have such a technique, right? Duanlingtian gasped. He was a little frightened. He noticed that as long as he looked at the gigantic word sword on the mountain wall, his gaze would become unfocused. It was as though the word sword had some sort of special magical power. I've searched through Emperor Wu's 2 reincarnations memories. Not only has he never seen such a strange thing, he has never even heard of it before. Duanlingtian muttered to himself with a gleam in his eyes. According to reincarnation Emperor Wu's memories, in an era that was even older than his first reincarnation, there were many powerhouses who were at the 7th level Emperor Wu stage and above on the Cloud Continent. However, even among those powerhouses, he had never heard of anyone who had such a technique. Just by carving the word sword on the mountain wall, it allowed my 9th level intermediate sword concept to break through to the 5th level advanced sword concept in one shot. Not only that, but it can also guide me in my sword skill as well. Duanlingtian took a deep breath when he thought of this. At the same time, the word sword, the sword concept that was about to dissipate, condensed again, and merged with the origin energy that had just rose in his hand. The sword, the sword, the sword, to Lingtian's the sword, 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 Lingtian the sword as well. At the same time, another 800 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared beside the 600 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons above Duanlingtian's head. It was the heaven and earth phenomenon that was formed when Duanlingtian, a 6th level void transformation martial artist, used his origin energy to draw upon the heaven and earth energy. 9 dragons' radiant flash. Duanlingtian's gaze turned slightly cold. The 3-foot-long sword in his hand suddenly swept out like an extension of his arm. What a wonderful feeling! This sword strike flashed out, and it gave Duanlingtian a feeling as if he had the help of the gods, as if he'd already studied the 9 dragons' radiant flash to the limit. Everything was so natural. Whoosh! 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 As Duanlingtian's sword swept out, the origin energy that pervaded the sword aura swelled up, instantly transforming into 9 divine dragons that bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced towards the other side of the mountain wall not far away. Whoosh! 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 The eyes of the 9 divine dragons flashed and 18 extreme flashes shot out. They easily penetrated the mountain wall and left 18 small holes that were so deep that the bottom could not be seen. Duanlingtian, who saw this scene, was completely dumbfounded. He did not even seem to notice when the 3-foot-long sword in his hand that flickered with the sword aura disappeared. This I've cultivated the 9 dragons radiant flash to the perfection stage? After a while, Duan Lingtian reacted, and his breathing became extremely rapid. The 9 dragons radiant flash was a heaven-rank advanced sword skill that came with the 7th form of the 9 dragons war sovereign technique, the sword dragon form. It was divided into 4 stages: rudimentary stage, initial stage, mastery stage, and perfection stage. When cultivated to the perfection stage, 9 dragons would appear when the sword was swung out, and 18 flashes would be released simultaneously, easily piercing through everything. It's that sword word again? After a while, Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and tried hard to suppress his surging emotions. My 9 dragons radiant flash was originally only cultivated to the initial stage. When the sword was swung out, only 3 dragons would appear. However, just now, when I was affected by the sword word, and the mysterious black shadow appeared in my mind to guide me on my sword skill, my 9 dragons radiant flash has entered the perfection stage in one go. In Duan Lingtian's opinion, this was really inconceivable. If someone else told him this, he would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. However, now that he had personally experienced it, he had no choice but to believe it. There's also the 9 tribulation sword control technique. Soon after, Duan Lingtian could not help but recall the actions of the mysterious black shadow in his mind earlier. After the mysterious black shadow displayed the perfection stage 9 dragons radiant flash, it continued to attack and skillfully merged the 9 dragons radiant flash into the 9 tribulation sword control technique. When the 9 swords were swung out, 81 dragons appeared, and 162 extreme flashes swept out in all directions, making it impossible for one to dodge. Without any hesitation, Duan Lingtian raised his hand, and the quasi-royal Great Spirit sword appeared. Subsequently, after he activated the split and combined formation, the sword was divided into 9 swords and controlled by his spiritual energy. They coiled around his body and spun continuously. All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian's eyes turned cold. 9 tribulation sword control technique. In an instant, Duan Lingtian tried his best to control the 9 swords, intending to make the 9 swords shoot out at the same time to display the greatest power of the 9 tribulation sword control technique. Whoosh! 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 However, dreams were beautiful, but reality was cruel. In the end, only 5 of the 9 quasi-royal Great Spirit swords that spun around Duan Lingtian's body shot out. It was as though 5 Duan Lingtian had attacked at the same time, and it was extremely imposing. Although he was a little disappointed, Duan Lingtian's mood was not affected. Since he was already prepared, he controlled the 5 swords to perform the 9 dragons radiant flash. Initially, he was still a little nervous. This was because he had only seen the mysterious black figure perform the 9 dragons radiant flash with the 9 tribulation sword control technique. It was his first time performing it. However, when he saw the 5 swords shot out with the 9 tribulation sword control technique and 9 divine dragons respectively, a total of 45 divine dragons shot out at the same time, he could not help but be pleasantly surprised. Whoosh! 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 The 45 pairs of eyes of the 48 divine dragons flashed and condensed 90 extreme flashes that shot out like rain, leaving 90 densely packed small holes on one side of the mountain wall. Each of the small holes was bottomless, showing the power of the extreme flashes. Who's the person who left the word, sword? Duan Lingtian, who had transformed the 9 quasi-royal Great Spirit swords back into one, gasped again. At the same time, he instinctively looked at the word sword on the mountain wall. He who had lost his vigilance, lost his focus and was attracted by the word sword on the mountain wall again. In his eyes, the word sword continued to enlarge. Subsequently, the voice that he heard before resonated in his ears again. The voice was indifferent as it entered his ears and explained the truth of the word sword to him. Of course, there were many things that he did not understand because they were too unfamiliar and difficult to understand. Unknowingly, Duan Lingtian regained his senses. There's no change. Looks like I won't be able to make a breakthrough every time I immerse myself in the word sword. After communicating and performing the sword concept again, Duan Lingtian shook his head when he saw that there was no change in the heaven and earth phenomenon in the sky above his head. He was not surprised. The sword concept was still the 5th-level advanced sword concept. When he immersed himself in the word sword again, there was no obvious improvement. Huh. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian raised his eyebrows. His eyes immediately landed on Feng Tianwu, who was not far away. Boom! Vast flames raged on Feng Tianwu's body. The heaven and earth energy stirred in the sky above her head and soon gathered into the heaven and earth phenomenon. There was a total of 1,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. 9th-level advanced fire concept. Initially, Duan Lingtian was still a little anxious. He was really worried that Feng Tianwu, who was immersed in the word sword, would ignore the energy from the fire spirit body in her body and forcefully communicate and perform the fire profundity. However, when he noticed that the fire concept on Feng Tianwu's body had stabilized at the 9th-level advanced fire concept, he could not help but feel relieved. Soon after, Duan Lingtian noticed that the flames on Feng Tianwu's body began to compress from top to bottom. In the end, it seemed to compress into the shape of a sword and transformed into a sword-shaped flame. At this moment, Feng Tianwu was completely shrouded in the sword-shaped flame. It was as though she had transformed into a fiery red gigantic sword. At the same time that it emitted a scorching aura, it also emitted a gradually growing fierce aura. Sword concept? Soon after, Duan Lingtian sensed a familiar aura from the sword-shaped flame around Feng Tianwu's body. It was the aura of sword concept. Although it was only the elementary sword concept, it still made Duan Lingtian feel extremely shocked. Tianwu didn't seem to have comprehended sword force before this, right? Duan Lingtian was shocked. He realized the changes on Feng Tianwu's body was due to the gigantic word, sword on the mountain wall. This sword character, who exactly left it behind? Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and shifted his gaze to the mountain wall again. However, he did not look at the word sword. Instead, he scanned the surroundings as though he was looking for something. Finally, he discovered some smaller words at the corner of the word, sword. They were words that were also engraved on the mountain wall. Whirlwind. Without any hesitation, Duan Lingtian flew out and arrived in front of the small words on the mountain wall in just a moment. He studied them carefully. At first glance, Duan Lingtian instinctively looked at the signature at the bottom right corner. Chapter 1022. Sword Saint? Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes when he saw the inscription. This Feng Qingyang guy is really arrogant. He actually dares to call himself a sword saint. In Duan Lingtian's opinion, Duan Lingtian was a sword saint. Any existence that could be called a saint was definitely an extremely powerful existence. Sword saint. A person who dared to call himself a sword saint must have a high attainment in the sword Tao. If the word sword that seems to be filled with magic was really left behind by Feng Qingyang, then, even if he calls himself the sword saint, he doesn't have an undeserved reputation. Duan Lingtian muttered to himself as he looked at the 5 words that were written before him. After all, the seemingly simple word sword had not only allowed him to comprehend the 5th-level advanced sword concept, but it had also helped him cultivate the heaven-rank advanced sword skill, the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash, to the perfection stage and merged the 9 Dragons Radiant Flash with the 9 Tribulation Sword Control Technique. Naturally, he knew very well that even though the word sword looked simple, every stroke contained the truth of the sword Tao. Perhaps only a sword cultivator powerhouse whose attainment in the sword Tao has reached a certain level would be able to inscribe the word sword. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Soon after, Duan Lingtian regained his senses. He looked up and began to read the densely packed words. The words were left behind by the inscription. Before I ascended, I left the Tao Martial Saint land and traveled the 4 seas. I've been to continents ruled by mortal stage Tao cultivators and mortal continents, ruled by both mortal stage Tao cultivators and mortal stage martial cultivators. In the end, I came to this mortal continent ruled by mortal stage martial cultivators, the Cloud Continent. In the 3 mortal continents, I've left behind my lifetime's comprehension of the sword Tao, waiting for the fated person to obtain it. If you can obtain half of my comprehension, you'll be able to move freely in the Tao Martial Saint land and ascend. The line of words ended here. Below it was the inscription, Sword Saint Feng Qingyang. The word sword was indeed left behind by him. Although he was mentally prepared, Duan Lingtian still couldn't help but gasp, and he was completely shocked. That mysterious word sword actually contained the comprehension left behind by this so-called sword saint, Feng Qingyang. It was his lifetime comprehension of the sword Tao. No wonder it was able to help his sword concept rise by an entire 5 levels. Also, this Feng Qingyang called himself a saint and came from the Tao martial saint land. On top of that, he said he's been to 3 mortal continents, and one of them is the Cloud Continent. The Cloud Continent is a mortal continent? Duan Lingtian frowned with a confused expression on his face. Based on what he said, he seems to have been to 2 other mortal continents similar to the Cloud Continent. It seems that this world is far bigger than I imagined. After taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian tried his best to suppress his surging emotions and calm himself down. According to the reincarnation Emperor Wu's memory, the Cloud Continent is surrounded by a vast ocean that seems to have no end. Even he found it difficult to explore it. Coupled with the Sword Saint, Feng Qingyang's message, the Cloud Continent might only be the tip of the iceberg in this world. Duan Lingtian's breathing quickened when he thought of this. In other words, apart from the Tao Martial Saint Land and the Cloud Continent, there are 2 other mortal continents that are similar to the Cloud Continent in the boundless ocean. Mortal continents? Mortal stage martial cultivators? Mortal stage Tao cultivators? Duan Lingtian's face was filled with confusion when he thought of this. He could still understand martial cultivators since they were martial artists. Tao cultivators, he had heard about it from the black-clad middle-aged man who had transformed Zhao Ming into a human puppet. At that time, the black-clad middle-aged man had told him about the origin of the talismans in his hands. At that time, he found out that the 3 talismans his cheapskate father had given him were Tao talismans drawn by some Saint Rudiment stage Tao cultivator. That black-clad middle-aged man isn't from the Cloud Continent. Moreover, he also called me a mortal stage martial cultivator. Could it be that he's also from the Tao martial saint land like the sword saint Feng Qingyang? Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he continued to speculate. Mortal stage martial cultivators, mortal stage Tao cultivators, Saint Rudiment stage Tao cultivators, human puppet, and the mortal continent Tao martial saint land ascension. It's a mess. It's too messy. Duan Lingtian felt a headache coming on as he continued to speculate. He realized that it was difficult for him to sort out this information. Forget it. I'm not going to think about it anymore. As long as I raise my strength, I'll naturally have the opportunity to come into contact with that level. At that time, everything will be clear. One had to admit that Duan Lingtian was very open-minded. Very soon, he tossed all the information that was troubling him to the back of his mind. However, there's one thing I'm certain of. The person who left behind these words in the gigantic word sword is very, very powerful. So powerful that it's beyond my imagination. Duan Lingtian did not doubt this at all. After letting out a sigh of relief, Duan Lingtian left the side of the mountain wall and returned to Feng Tianwu and Xiong Quan's side. His gaze immediately landed on Xiong Quan. Currently, the sword concept on Xiong Quan's body was emitting a fierce aura that shot up into the sky. However, the heaven and earth phenomenon that was formed by the heaven and earth energy above his head was still the 200 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. There was no change at all. It seems like Xiong Quan's current situation is the same as when I was attracted by the word sword for the second time. The word sword did not help me break through again. It's only when I was attracted by the word sword for the first time that there was an obvious breakthrough. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Of course, this did not mean that it was useless to look at the word sword later on. It was just that the effect later on was not as exaggerated as the first time. Earlier, when Duan Lingtian looked at the word sword for the second time, although his sword concept did not break through again, the word sword still taught him many things. However, it was all information that was extremely obscure and difficult for him to understand at the moment. He could not comprehend it for the time being. He had an extremely strong intuition. If he could comprehend those obscure and difficult to understand information, his sword concept would be elevated to a higher level. Moreover, it would not be as simple as elevating by 1 or 2 levels. This word sword is even crazier than the sword concept fragment. No, even the sword profundity fragment might not be as helpful to a sword cultivator as this word. Such a thought appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind out of nowhere. This remote canyon. It's simply a heaven for a sword cultivator. As Duan Lingtian muttered to himself, he looked around the canyon. He noticed that the entire canyon was located deep in the mountains. Even the sky above the canyon only revealed small openings. These small openings were all small openings that were squeezed together at the intersection of branches and leaves that covered the entire mountain forest. The light in the entire canyon shone in from these small openings. If I were to fly above, I would definitely not be able to discover this canyon unless I use my spiritual energy to carry out a carpet search. Of course, if Duan Lingtian really passed by here without knowing, he would definitely not use his spiritual energy to carry out a carpet search. This place was only one of the countless remote mountains in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. It was very difficult to attract anyone's attention. If it was not for Xiongquan's hometown here, Duan Lingtian would not have stayed here at all. Besides that, apart from the sky above this canyon, there's only the one-line sky entrance left. It's usually blocked by the forest. If it wasn't for Xiongquan leading the way today, I'm afraid I wouldn't have known about this canyon even if I were to pass by outside. When Duan Lingtian thought about this, he could not help but feel a little relieved. He did not expect this at all. He did not expect to encounter such a fortuitous encounter when he came back to look for Xiongquan and help him repair his dantian. If I really want to calculate the value of the word sword on the mountain wall of this canyon, I'm afraid it's even more valuable than all the fortuitous encounters I've had in the past. Duan Lingtian did not doubt this at all. The reason he thought so was naturally because of the message left behind by Feng Qingyang, who called himself the Sword Saint. Although Feng Qingyang's message was not long, each and every word he left behind showed how powerful he was. If that Feng Qingyang wasn't bragging, he's most likely someone who once stood at the peak of the Dao Martial Saint land. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said something like, if I obtain half of the comprehension he left behind in the Sword Dao, I'll be able to roam freely in the Dao Martial Saint land and ascend. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Boom! Suddenly, a loud sound resonated in the air and completely disrupted Duan Lingtian's thoughts. It attracted Duan Lingtian's attention. Duan Lingtian looked in the direction of the sound. It was where Feng Tianwu was standing. At this moment, the sword-shaped flame on Feng Tianwu's body was rolling and burning continuously. The fierce aura on the flame continued to rise. This aura. With just a glance, Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed immediately. Heavens! What did he discover? At this moment, the spiritual energy that he extended out clearly sensed that the Sword Saint's aura had changed. The sword concept that emanated from the sword-shaped flame on Feng Tianwu's body had actually transformed from the elementary sword concept to the intermediate sword concept. Moreover, it was not just an ordinary intermediate sword concept. 7th level intermediate sword concept. At the same time, Duan Lingtian instinctively raised his head and looked at the heaven and earth phenomenon above Feng Tianwu's head. There were 80 ancient horned dragon silhouettes hovering beside the 1,000 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. They were lifelike and had a majestic aura. The sword concept was equivalent to the strength of 80 ancient horned dragons. Chapter 1023. Feng Tianwu, a person who did not even comprehend sword force in the past, had comprehended the 7th level intermediate sword concept just because of the word sword on the mountain wall. It was shocking. Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed brightly. He was once again shocked by the Sword Saint Feng Qingyang's technique. Just carving the word sword on the mountain wall had caused such a huge change to him and Tianwu. If he did not witness it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. Soon after, Duan Lingtian seemed to have noticed something. His eyes widened and shock filled his face. At this moment he was shocked to see something. The heaven and earth energy above Feng Tianwu's head stirred, and the heaven and earth phenomenon continued to change. At the same time, the aura emitted by the sword-shaped flame on Feng Tianwu's body became even more ferocious. As the flame soared into the sky, it seemed as though it could pierce through the sky. 8th level intermediate sword concept. 9th level intermediate sword concept. Duan Lingtian's eyes widened when he saw the changes in the heaven and earth phenomenon above Feng Tianwu's head. The shock on his face did not disappear at all. Apart from the heaven and earth phenomenon, his spiritual energy had also detected that the sword concept on Feng Tianwu's sword-shaped flame was getting stronger every second. 2nd level advanced sword concept. Duan Lingtian was completely shocked when he realized Feng Tianwu's sword concept had improved to such a level. How's this possible? Even Xiong Quan, who had comprehended sword force earlier, only managed to comprehend the 1st level advanced sword concept after receiving the guidance from the word, sword on the mountain wall. Tianwu didn't even comprehend sword force before. How's it possible that her improvement is greater than Xiong Quan's? Duan Lingtian could not help but gasp. He remembered that Xiong Quan had already comprehended the advanced sword force when his dantian was crippled. However, after going through the guidance of the word sword on the mountain wall, he only managed to comprehend the 1st level advanced sword concept. Could it be that, because everyone has a different level of comprehension, the sword character on the mountain wall is of different help to each person? For a moment, Duan Lingtian could only think this way. That seemed to be the only explanation for what was happening in front of him. Other than this, he really couldn't think of a second possibility. However, very soon, Duan Lingtian's thoughts were mercilessly crushed by reality, making him realize that the whole thing was not as simple as he thought. 3rd level advanced sword concept. 4th level advanced sword concept. 5th level advanced sword concept. Duan Lingtian used his spiritual energy to sense the changes in Feng Tianwu's sword concept. As he watched the changes in the heaven and earth phenomenon above Feng Tianwu's head, he was completely numb. Finally, the aura of the sword concept stopped changing. Meanwhile, the heaven and earth energy above Feng Tianwu's had finally returned to normal, and the heaven and earth phenomenon completely froze there. The ancient horned dragon silhouettes that filled the sky wriggled down. They were lifelike, and it was a visual shock. There were a total of 2,000 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. This was the heaven and earth phenomenon that was created when Feng Tianwu used her fire concept and sword concept to mobilize the heaven and earth energy. When the two concepts were cast together, it was equivalent to the strength of 2,000 ancient horned dragons. The 9th level advanced fire concept was equivalent to the strength of 1,000 ancient horned dragons. Therefore, Feng Tianwu's sword concept was the 9th level advanced sword concept. Even if it's me, after receiving the guidance of that sword character, I can only improve my 9th level intermediate sword concept to the 5th level advanced sword concept. Tianwu transformed from a martial artist who did not comprehend sword force to a martial artist who comprehended the 9th level advanced sword concept in such a short time. Even if Tianwu's comprehension is stronger than mine, it shouldn't be so much stronger, right? This is too exaggerated. Duan Lingtian's emotions were extremely agitated, and he was unable to calm down for a long time. In the past, Feng Tianwu, who did not even come into contact with sword force, had comprehended the 9th level advanced sword concept under the guidance of the word sword on the mountain wall. What's going on? Duan Lingtian was puzzled no matter how hard he thought about it. Now he could practically confirm that it was definitely not a problem with his comprehension ability. At this moment, Feng Tianwu woke up. What a powerful strength! Is this the concept of sword? After Feng Tianwu woke up, she stretched out both of her arms, and the sword-shaped flame sword. It seemed to have transformed into 2 flaming greatswords, causing the air to emit a wave of scorching aura. Tianwu, how did you do it? Suddenly, Feng Tianwu heard her dreamy voice, and she could not help but return to her senses. After the sword-shaped flame on her body vanished, she smiled as she looked at the source of the voice. Feng Tianwu looked at Duan Lingtian and smiled faintly. It seemed to be able to captivate all living things, causing Duan Lingtian to be in a daze for a while. It was as though he had forgotten the important matter. Elder brother Duan, what did you ask me earlier? It was only when Feng Tianwu's gentle and pleasant voice entered his ears that Duan Lingtian shuddered and completely returned to his senses. He smiled wryly and said, I asked about your sword concept. Sword concept. A hint of confusion appeared on Feng Tianwu's beautiful face. Try to cast your sword concept and look at the heaven and earth phenomenon formed by the heaven and earth energy gathered by it. Perhaps even you don't know what level it's at now. Duan Lingtian said. Feng Tianwu nodded obediently. Subsequently, she intended to execute her sword concept according to what Duan Lingtian said. Suddenly, as if she'd noticed something, Feng Tianwu's beautiful brows frowned slightly. At the same time, Feng Tianwu's beautiful brows eased up. In the next moment, flames that covered the sky soared from her body and emitted waves of scorching aura. It emitted waves of heat that assaulted Duan Lingtian's face, and it caused him to be unable to help but narrow his eyes. He felt that it was slightly strange. Didn't he ask Tianwu to unleash her sword concept? Why did she execute her fire concept? At practically the same time that Duan Lingtian felt that it was strange, the flames that soared from Feng Tianwu's body gave birth to waves of fierce aura that caused the flames that covered the sky to transform into sword-shaped flames. 9. Ninth level advanced sword concept? When Feng Tianwu saw the 2,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that appeared in the sky above her, she was dumbstruck for a moment. She was unable to regain her senses for a long time. Although she could feel that the sword concept that she had comprehended was not simple, she did not expect it to be so powerful. Ninth level advanced sword concept. It was on par with the ninth level advanced fire concept that she had comprehended. Tianwu. At this moment, Duan Lingtian seemed to have noticed something, and he looked at Feng Tianwu with a solemn expression. I noticed that you executed your fire concept before executing your sword concept. I wonder if it was intentional or you had no choice but to do so. After Duan Lingtian asked this question, he stared fixedly at Feng Tianwu as if he was eager to know the answer. I don't know what's going on as well. However, if I didn't execute my fire concept first, I wouldn't be able to communicate with my sword concept. Feng Tianwu's beautiful brows knit together once more as she recalled the scene from before. The sword concept seems to have been born from the fire concept. As expected. After hearing Feng Tianwu's reply, Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed as he completely confirmed it. Earlier, the process of Feng Tianwu executing her sword concept made him feel a little familiar. This sort of feeling was similar to when he first utilized wind concept before he was able to utilize fire concept, and the latter was born within the wind concept. Elder brother Duan, do you know why? When Feng Tianwu saw the sudden realization in Duan Lingtian's eyes, she could not help but ask curiously, Tianwu, if I'm not mistaken, your sword concept is born from the fire concept. Not only that, as long as you execute your fire profundity, you'll also be able to create a sword profundity of the same level. Duan Lingtian said solemnly. When he reached the end of his sentence, a hint of envy could be seen in the depth of his eyes. Although he did not know why the sword concept could be born from the fire concept, all of this was ultimately because of the word sword on the mountain wall. That soars St. Fengqingyang. He's really not simple. He actually allowed Tianwu to use her fire concept to create her sword concept. Duan Lingtian could not help but sigh inwardly. He knew very well in his heart. Tianwu's sword concept that was born from the fire concept was a completely different concept from the sword concept that she comprehended on her own. For the former, as long as her fire concept improved, her sword concept would improve as well. There was no need for her to comprehend it. As for the latter, she would need to comprehend it herself. This was similar to the method he used to create his fire concept using his wind concept through the roaming dragon form, the 8th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique. His fire concept did not require him to comprehend it as well. As long as his wind concept improved, his fire concept would improve as well. Once he comprehended the wind profundity in the future, his wind profundity would also create his fire profundity. Boom! At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt a wave of scorching aura charging at him. He noticed the flames on Feng Tianwu's body had soared. She had cast her fire profundity. First level monarch stage fire profundity. The heaven and earth energy in the air stirred. The 1,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that were formed by the 9th level advanced fire concept soon turned into 2,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. Tianwu is trying to create her sword profundity? Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes. He could guess Feng Tianwu's plan. In the next moment, the flames on Feng Tianwu's body swayed and transformed into an even more vast sword-shaped flame that pointed at the entrance of the canyon. At the same time, the 1,000 silhouettes of ancient horn dragons above Feng Tianwu's head that were originally formed by the heaven and earth energy mobilized by her 9th-level advanced sword concept had now become 2,000 silhouettes of ancient horn dragons. Chapter 1024. After casting the first-level Monarch Stage Fire Profundity, Feng Tianwu used it to generate the first-level Monarch Stage Sword Profundity as well. The strength of the two first-level Monarch Stage Profundities was equivalent to the strength of 4,000 ancient horn dragons when they were combined. Tianwu. Duanling Tian was shocked when he saw Feng Tianwu use the Fire Profundity to generate the Sword Profundity. He reminded her solemnly, "Don't communicate or cast the Fire Profundity again if it's not necessary." At this moment, Duanling Tian could clearly feel the restlessness of the fire spirit body's energy in Feng Tianwu's body through his extended spiritual energy. It was as though it was going to explode from Feng Tianwu's body. For a moment, his heart was filled with concern and anxiety. He did not want Feng Tianwu to die. Okay. Feng Tianwu smiled happily when she heard Duanling Tian's words and saw the anxiety on Duanling Tian's face. She nodded obediently. At the same time, the fire profundity on her body faded away. So did the sword profundity. This is unbelievable. After dispersing the two profundities, Feng Tianwu's beautiful face was filled with astonishment. Who's the person who left the word sword behind? To think that a martial artist like me who didn't even comprehend sword force could comprehend the same level of sword concept that was generated from the fire concept in one fell swoop. Feng Tianwu was even more shocked by her experience this time. There's a passage of words over there. You'll know who left it when you take a look. Duanling Tian glanced at the corner of the mountain wall where the word sword was carved and reminded Feng Tianwu. At the same time, his heart was filled with shock. I wonder how the word sword merged the sword concept into Tianwu's fire concept. Could it be because Tianwu has the fire spirit body? Duanling Tian speculated inwardly. Otherwise, why didn't the word sword fuse the sword concept into my other concepts? Or perhaps it's because Tianwu didn't even come into contact with sword force before this, so the sword concept she comprehended automatically fused with her fire concept? Duanling Tian guessed again that this might be the case. Hearing Duanling Tian's words, Feng Tianwu's eyes suddenly lit up. She glanced at the side of the mountain wall not far away. Her gaze was quickly attracted by the words that she could not see clearly due to the distance. Whoosh! Feng Tianwu's figure moved and flew out. Like a fire spirit, she arrived in front of the mountain wall and carefully looked at the words on it. The words were left behind by the sword saint Feng Qingyang. Similar to Duanling Tian, Feng Tianwu was also shocked when she finished reading the words. Cloud Continent is only a mortal continent? A martial artist on Cloud Continent? A mortal realm martial artist? Dao Martial Saint Land? Ascended to the immortal realm? Feng Tianwu's beautiful face was filled with astonishment. Compared to Duanling Tian, she was even more bewildered and completely unable to make sense of what was going on. After all, Duanling Tian had come into contact with someone suspected to be from the Dao Martial Saint Land before. It was the black-clad middle-aged man who had transformed Zhao Ming into a human puppet. From the black-clad middle-aged man, Duanling Tian learned about the origin of the 3 talismans his cheapskate father had left for him. At the same time, he also learned about the Dao Martial Saint Land. For example, the talismans were Dao talismans. Moreover, they were drawn by a Saint Rudiment stage Dao cultivator. Whoosh! At this moment, Xiong Quan, who was immersed in the word sword on the mountain wall, finally regained his senses. He heaved a sigh of relief as though a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. His face was filled with bewilderment. What did those words mean? Xiong Quan frowned and muttered to himself as though he was thinking about something. He had a feeling that as long as he understood the meaning of those words, his sword concept would definitely improve. Moreover, it would not be as simple as improving by just 1 or 2 levels. Xiong Quan. A voice resonated. causing Xiong Quan to jolt awake. At the same time, he instinctively looked at the source of the voice. There stood an extraordinarily handsome purple-clad young man with a graceful bearing. Young master. Facing this purple-clad young man, Xiong Quan did not dare to slack at all. He greeted him respectfully. Xiong Quan, how did you find this place? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. In his opinion, the fact that Xiong Quan was able to find this place was not only a great fortune for him, but it was also a great fortune for him and Feng Tianwu. In fact, as long as someone came here in the future, they would be able to obtain a great fortune as well. The gigantic word sword on the mountain wall in this canyon could be considered as a priceless treasure. To a certain extent, it could change a person's life. Putting other people aside, Xiong Quan. Logically speaking, with Xiong Quan's comprehension ability, it was almost impossible for him to comprehend the void transformation concept. However, because of the word sword on the mountain wall, Xiong Quan was able to comprehend the first-level advanced sword concept in one fell swoop. It even stimulated his potential in the sword Dao. In the future, Xiong Quan might even be able to comprehend the sword profundity, let alone the higher-level sword concept. The word sword on the mountain wall helped Xiong Quan complete a rebirth. According to the sword saint Feng Qingyang, as long as we comprehend half of the sword Dao contained in the word sword that he left behind, we'll be able to rule the entire Dao martial saint land. Based on this, we can see that whether it's me, Tianwu, or Xiong Quan, we've only comprehended the surface of the sword Dao contained in the word sword that he left behind. It was not difficult for Duan Lingtian to figure this out. Young master. Faced with Duan Lingtian's question, Xiong Quan replied respectfully, I discovered this canyon when I was hunting in the mountain half a month ago. After I came in, I was attracted by the word sword on the mountain wall. When I woke up, I realized the 7th-level elementary sword concept that I originally comprehended had transformed into the first-level advanced sword concept in one fell swoop. Xiong Quan could not help but be pleasantly surprised when he recalled the scene at that time. Duan Lingtian nodded. Then he raised an eyebrow and said with a smile, Xiong Quan, you've already comprehended the 7th-level elementary sword concept before you found this place? It seems like you haven't been slacking off all these years. I've always wanted to follow you around and solve your problems in the future. Due to this reason, I didn't dare to slack off, Xiong Quan said earnestly. His words came from the bottom of his heart, causing Duan Lingtian's heart to tremble. It was filled with warmth. Now that your dantian has been repaired, your cultivation base will be restored soon. You can continue to follow me around in the future. Duan Lingtian smiled. Thank you, young master. Xiong Quan's eyes lit up when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. He quickly thanked him. Initially, he thought that even if his dantian was repaired, his young master might not allow him to follow him around since his cultivation base had not improved. He did not expect his young master would take the initiative to ask him to follow him around. This caused him to be slightly overjoyed. Apart from you, is there anyone else who knows about this place? Duan Lingtian asked again. 10 days ago I brought Eru here once. I originally wanted to let Eru comprehend the sword concept from the word sword, but I never expected that Eru would only take a glance at the word sword before fainting. He was unconscious for an entire 3 days and 3 nights before waking up. When Xiong Quan spoke up to hear, an apologetic expression appeared on his face. He fainted. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. After pondering for a moment, he guessed the reason. It should be a problem with his spiritual energy. Whose spiritual energy is only at the origin core stage. It's difficult for him to withstand the sword Dao contained in the word sword. As for Xiong Quan, although his dantian is crippled and he lost his cultivation base, his spiritual energy is not affected at all. It's still at the void prying stage. Duan Lingtian thought to himself, Elder brother Duan, do you think the message left behind by the sword saint, Feng Qingyang, can be trusted? In this world, there are actually 2 other mortal continents similar to the Cloud Continent and the Dao Martial Saint Land that we don't know about. At this moment, Feng Tianwu returned and looked at Duan Lingtian. Her beautiful face was filled with astonishment. Tianwu, it's up to you whether you can trust it or not. As for me, I don't dare to say that I can't trust anything before I've traveled to every corner of this world. Duan Lingtian said slowly. Feng Tianwu nodded in agreement with Duan Lingtian's words. This mountain wall with the word sword carved on it. Duan Lingtian's gaze landed on the nearby mountain wall. After a flash of light, a crazy idea rose in his heart before he flew out. Whoosh! A sword appeared out of thin air in his hand. It was the quasi-royal grade spirit sword. Whoosh! As Duan Lingtian's hand trembled, the sword ray on the quasi-royal grade spirit sword in his hand shot out toward the side of the mountain wall with the word sword carved on it. Elder brother Duan wants to separate that side of the mountain wall and bring it away? It was not difficult for Feng Tianwu to guess Duan Lingtian's thoughts when she saw Duan Lingtian's actions. She had to admit that this idea was crazy. However, she asked herself if it was her, she would have done the same as well. Based on the sword concept that she could use with the fire concept, the mountain wall with the word sword carved on it could be considered a priceless treasure. Unfortunately, although it was a good idea, it might not be realized. Clang! The sword ray that Duan Lingtian shot out landed on the mountain wall with the word sword carved on it. However, it seemed to have collided with something hard. It did not even leave a mark on it. Clang! 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 Duan Lingtian, who did not believe in heresy, attacked with his sword from tricky angles. However, he realized that as long as it was on the mountain wall with the word sword carved on it, he could not damage it at all. Unless I move the entire mountain. However, even if I can move it, my spatial ring won't be big enough to store it. Duan Lingtian was slightly troubled by this. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.